In the geospatial industry, our mission is understanding the location of everything. But location isn't just about the places. It's also about the journey. The journey of how we got here. The journey of people who strive to make a difference. The journey of understanding our world through the eyes of innovation. At Project Geospatial, our stories are about the journey of where. Come check us out at www.projectgeospatial.com. Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons, and back with us at Geoint 2023 here in St. Louis, Missouri, is Mark Chatelain. You're now the CIO in NGA, right?
That's correct, Adam.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about that role, and maybe a little bit about yourself as we dive back into your history with the industry and the agency as a whole?
Absolutely. Thanks a lot again for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to not only share a little bit about me, but also about CIOT, which is the organization that I'm responsible for, and where we're going in the future. And so my previous role was the associate CIO, where I was responsible for things like policy and audits and engagement. I didn't necessarily deal with any of the technical aspects of the CIOT directorate. So moving into this role, and again, I've been in the role about 3 months now. I had the good fortune to be mentored by Mark Andrus for the last 3 years. And obviously he did something right because I was able to compete for the job and got it. So it's the first time that they've actually selected a CIO from inside the agency in about 10 years. And so I feel very honored. And a lot of the workforce was happy for 2 reasons. The first reason being is that there's hope for them to succeed into getting into roles like this because a number of them have aspirations to be there. But the second thing is they didn't have to do any of the read books that are traditional for somebody coming in outside of the agency. So they had a little bit of relief there. I've been around NGA since 1986. I was a contractor until 2005 and then joined NGA as a government employee then, working commercial imagery. And so I've had a number of different opportunities to do things within NGA to kind of build my resume, our library of capabilities. And so I think I'm suited well for the role as CIO. My focus is on making sure that we take care of our partners. I want to see a smile on our partners' faces, whether it's our analytic partners, our international partners, or people that work with and depend on our IT, our information technology. I had the distinct pleasure of our director saying, I'm going to put CIO on the map because you're the most underrepresented, underappreciated organization in NGA. So that made me kind of brighten up and say, wow, I've got a champion.
Well, on that note, it may sound common sense, but what do you do in CIO?
So
CIOT.
In CIOT, and again, it's a combination of the Chief Information Officer role, which is mandated by Klinger-Cohen in federal law since 1996. Every agency, every government organization has got to have a Chief Information Officer. It's one person that they can go to and say, why did this happen or why didn't this happen? And so it's that piece, but it's also the technology piece. And again, that's responsible for everything from the applications that we develop to deliver Geoint to the infrastructure, both the transport layer as well as the compute layer that provides everything for our agency, whether it's the VTCs, whether it's or the video teleconferencing systems to the desktops that the analysts use.
Excellent. And that dives into all the a lot of the cloud and machine learning infrastructure that NGA supports too, right?
Absolutely. So we have programs within CIOT like Watchman, like Sapphire, which are just different implementations of artificial intelligence and using the cloud and things like that. But we're also a supporting organization for our partner organization called Data and Digital Innovation, led by Mark Munsell. And again, their task is to cover Project Maven, to be our chief data officer organization, managing all of our data across the enterprise, as well as doing innovative things with artificial intelligence and things like that. And so we are a supporting organization to them.
Now, can you talk about the shift in strategy in terms of how things are today compared to maybe how things were 20 years ago, how that evolution progressed, and what we are focused on from an infrastructure approach then versus now?
Absolutely. So again, 20 years ago, we were just talking about feeling old. I feel really old when I look back on where we've been and where we're going, but it's old in a good way. I can still remember some of the mistakes we made, some of the problems we had, and then be able to implement solutions that are not going to experience those same problems. When I first started with NGA, we were developing a system called the digital production system. It's the first time ever you are moving from doing hard copy maps to doing hard copy data. I mean, it's literally punch cards that were used to put information into a computer, converting that more to a digital environment. And again, it was a huge system and a huge endeavor, first time ever undertaken by an agency to do something like this. And it worked out okay. We got through initial operating capability, but there were so many problems in building this huge system of systems of systems. Dr. Annette Kriegel, who was a chief technologist at NGA, wrote a book actually called Behind the Wizard's Curtain. And it talked a little bit about this huge systems of systems and how you really can't depend on those to get the job done. So we've moved a long way from that to getting to the point today where we actually build very small microservices that deliver a limited capability, but again, they're able to actually be delivered in a very short order. And again, that's part of our software way that we have established. Again, taking and developing applications and delivering them rapidly and being able to turn them around. Again, it's the fail early, fail often strategy.
Excellent. What are some of the challenges you faced along this journey to get the technology where it is today?
So a couple of challenges is, I'll save the people thing for last. Cybersecurity is a challenge. We want to develop on the low side and move things to the high side. But again, there's all kinds of things available on the low side that we don't have on the high side. And so again, trying to accommodate eventually deploying things to the high side, you've got to take into account cybersecurity. That's the first thing. The second thing is the people. Finding the right people who have the mindset associated with developing in this manner, the small, quick turnaround type development, but then again, understand our culture and understand our technology and where geospatial intelligence is going.
So it's a challenge to find these right type of people to bring into the organization to compound and scale this effort up? Absolutely.
Okay.
In terms of what are you doing to address these challenges?
One of the things we're doing to address these challenges is making sure that our workforce is trained. Again, we offer a number of different opportunities to learn about DevOps and SecDevOps and the technology associated with it. One of the things we're partnering with as our cloud vendors is actually doing training classes to get everybody up to speed on what it means to be in the cloud, services that are offered. And again, we offer that training pretty much agency-wide so people can become involved and understand where things are going. We've started cybersecurity programs as well. But one of the things that we're really focusing on is the pipeline of individuals moving into the agency. It wasn't enough to hire people out of college. So we started an intern program, and we actually employ freshmen, juniors, sophomores, seniors in college, or even master's candidates. And we give them an opportunity to come to work, get a clearance, and work at NGA, getting paid, assuming all the benefits associated with being a government employee. And again, they do that for a 3 to 6 month period, go back to school, they're guaranteed a job when they come out.
Excellent.
Assuming everything works right. So just this year, just this week, we've actually opened up those opportunities to high school students, both in St. Louis as well as in the DC area.
Wow, high school students.
High school students. So we've got 64 high school students coming on board this week and then next month. They'll be fully cleared and they will be paid commensurate salary for our entry-level positions, have a full-time job as a high school student. So again, they start to develop that GIS mentality very young.
Now, what's the cadence for that? Is that just during the summer for them, or is that after hours for school?
No, it's actually during the summers for them. So it'll basically June, July, and August, 3 months out of the year, they will come to work at NGA. They'll have basically place to sit. They'll be integrated with our team. So we've got probably 15 or 16 coming into the actual technology organization. We're bringing in analysts, depending on whatever their kid's interest is. And so again, since they haven't really developed that major associated with GIS or technology or political science, again, it gives them an opportunity to experience the agency in whole.
Wow.
And hopefully be able to direct them where they're going. So
the circle all the way back around with what you're doing with technology and the theme of this conference, the metaverse. How do some of the technologies that you're learning about in terms of the metaverse and virtual spaces or augmented reality or digital twins, how does that affect your decisions for NCIOT for moving technology forward?
So it's funny you mentioned the word digital twin. I saw a really interesting broadcast this morning about they've developed a digital twin for the Titanic so that they're able to model and take a look back in history of what's going on. And that's exactly what we intend on doing with our foundation digital twin that Todd Johannesson mentioned this morning in his talk. Again, he talked a little bit about developing this digital twin. That's something my organization is responsible for developing, actually funding and developing this digital twin so that they can begin to understand where we could take things into the metaverse.
And the infrastructure needs, I'm sure, for that are much more vast than just pulling in collections from day to day, right?
Exactly. It really depends on our cloud infrastructure. We can't afford to build the data centers large enough to hold all that data. So it depends on the cloud infrastructure that we have. It depends on our transport layer that we have. Again, we are the only agency in the federal government that has 100 gigabit per second network. Again, because of the amount of data that we have to transfer. And it really goes just back to what you were talking about. Developing this digital twin and moving that data around is going to require those huge pipes.
Well, as we approach our closing here, I want to offer you a chance to any words of wisdom to any rising students who hear about the awesome work that NGA is doing, whether that bringing in high school or college, but just kind of inspire them to get into the career field. What would you say to them?
Take a look at the opportunities that the intelligence community offers. It's not just NGA. I think we're the first agency to offer it to high school students. But take a look at the different opportunities across the intelligence community to get involved and learn and understand the way we do business and become fluent in those types of discussions. And keep a broad, open mind. Don't focus on just one area. I only can do this. Take a look at the whole thing and make your decisions based on that.
What keeps you still in the industry? Why do you like it?
The opportunity.
The opportunity.
Opportunity to make a difference.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm Adam Simmons here with Mark Chatelain. We'll talk to everybody next time. Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons, and we're back at Geoint 2023 here in St. Louis, Missouri. I have the pleasure of talking with Trey Treadwell. He's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Treasury,
Yes.
Correct? And Trey, can you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit more formally and tell me a little bit how you got involved with the industry as a whole?
Good. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate it, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. This is my first Geoint. I've been part of the geospatial community for over 20 years. I am at the Department of Treasury right now in a detail from OD&I, Office of Director of National Intelligence. I've been with them for about 13 years, since 2010 now. Just finished about a 4-year role as the intelligence community's Chief Financial Officer. And at about that point in time, it seemed like a good time to move on to something else. And one of the biggest challenges we have in the intelligence community overall is so much of the intelligence community effort is spent on defense intelligence and focusing on military overall. However, we have 4 instruments of national power that we really exercise: diplomacy, informational, military, and economic. And of those 4, the Department of Treasury is the leverage arm for the economic instrument of national power, and how we leverage tariffs, how we issue sanctions, how we use the global power of the U.S. economy to influence our national security policy and global policy and norms of and prerogatives and principles of the United States. And in that avenue, the Department of Treasury Office of Intelligence and Analysis is one of the smallest elements of the IC. Was stood up in the wake of 9/11, even before the IRTPA. It was established around 2003, 2004 timeline in statute, and as a result to focus on countering the threat finance and how terrorists move money globally, and really look at those activities and understand how we can cut off their access to funding and finance. It has been a very enlightening opportunity, because most of my career, 11 years active duty in the Air Force, working NRO programs, about 4 years in the private sector, advising on intelligence community programs, and then coming back to OD&I in the office of the Chief Financial Officer since 2010. And I tell this to a lot of young professionals, like, I've been with OD&I now for 13 years. I'm on my 7th job. And so people shouldn't get too complacent and stay one place, keep growing and learning and challenging yourself. And when you lay out that plan for where you want to be, I never would have envisioned this is where I would be at this point in my career. So very lucky to have had such a great opportunity in the intelligence community for a little over 25 years now, and really loving just the opportunity to serve.
Excellent. So circling it back around to the Treasury side of things, and maybe bringing it down a couple levels, what does your role have to do with Geoint?
Thank you for that question. I've been here, this is my 3rd day here at Geoint. I've been asked that question a lot by a lot of my friends and colleagues across the community that are here. And they're like, why is Treasury, why are you interested in Geoint? And I have both a personal interest and a professional interest. And the personal interest is I've been doing this for a long time. Like I said, it's my first Geoint symposium. Super excited to be here. Been working with a lot of these companies in different capacities and the organizations for a long time. Treasury specific is coming out of our history of being counter-threat finance. We have made a major shift in how we do our work and the work that we do, focusing less on the CT work in business and more on the strategic global macroeconomic analysis and informing policymakers on the things that they need to be aware of from a global economic perspective, or specifically in Russia and China and what they're doing and where they're doing it, trade activities, movement of dollars, the threat of Chinese using their economy and driving towards only being able to use the RMB as a currency for trading with China. Well, when we look at all of this information, and so much of the economic information is available in the public space and commercially available or publicly available, it's just data. And there are billions, if not trillions and petabytes and exabytes of data that are out there. Well, the geospatial community is looking at data, and especially unclassed data, in a lot of different ways. So what I'm trying to learn is that how is the geospatial community looking at data, and how are they analyzing it? How are they applying AI, ML technologies to that? Because I want to be able to bring that same sort of capability and technology into the Treasury. As a small element, we don't have a lot of acquisition expertise or capability. We have mostly analysts, and my role within the Office of Intelligence and Analysis is sort of like the chief operating officer. I've got human capital, I've got the budget, I've got the infrastructure on the IT side from a secure side perspective. And so I provide all of those capabilities to our analytic core. And I want to start to bring in more of the technology that the community is using overall. And part of being a Geoint is learning what's out there, what's available, who's doing what, and how do I get access to that? And then starting to create some strategic partnerships, specifically with those organizations that could do that, such as NGA, DIA, NSA, NRO, CIA, and others that are also here, and sort of establish that relationship. And yesterday I visited Moonshot Labs, where we met, and was a great opportunity to see what they're doing totally unclassified, engaging the private sector, sort of this open consortium ability to bring in expertise that we just haven't traditionally accessed in the intelligence community, and bring that to the Department of the Treasury and our intelligence analysis and our policymakers, so that we're getting really what's available, not just things that we have known for years and years.
So this sounds like the beginning of a larger engagement from your organization to reach out and do more, right?
Absolutely. The Treasury Department and the Secretary was, I say recently added to the National Security Council. I don't know the exact point in time, but it's been in the last couple of years. And so sort of shifting the Department of Treasury just from looking at the U.S. economy and what we do there to really being a national security component, a customer of intelligence very heavily is a priority, and how we inform those policymakers on the decision that they're making and provide them with accurate, timely, and relevant intelligence to make those informed decisions.
So far, what have you seen at the conference? You don't have to mention specific companies, but any specific, any general technologies that have kind of impressed you or caught your interest?
So, I mean, the common theme and word of the day is AI ML, and what we're leveraging and what you see on the floor a lot of is everybody has some component of AI ML in their display, it seems like, and that takes on different flavors. I think the overall is we need to be able to look at data, the data that's available to us. How do we organize it? How do we structure it? How do we sift through it? And while the geospatial component is interesting and something I care greatly about, how do I draw that corollary between that and our global economic system and think about that as a geospatial problem in terms of just data and analyzing and identifying what the anomalies and characteristics are of it that we need to be paying attention to. And so dealing with the quantity of data, how you sort through it, we can't do it with people anymore. It's just too massive and too much information. And focusing on how we leverage what the leading edge technologies are doing to sift through that data and highlight those things that we need to be watching for and watching out for.
Well, excellent. So as we wrap up, I want to give you one last question. I know you touched on in the beginning when you talked about your career a bit, but any words of inspiration for young professionals who are interested in, maybe not even interested yet, but what would you say to get them interested in the career?
I would say that there's an interesting bit of work everywhere you look, and if you just continue to pursue the things that interest you and continue to learn and grow and challenge yourself and say, all right, be curious. I think that's the key element, is be curious and don't be afraid to step forward. I learned early on in my career, when I was a relatively junior Air Force captain, I stood up in a room one time where I probably shouldn't have been in the first place and asked a question I probably shouldn't have asked in the second place. And I had an old crusty colonel that came up to me afterwards and said, don't ever stop doing that, because you're asking questions, you're being curious, and you're saying, hey, I don't know this, why are we doing it? And if you're the one that has that question, especially in a large room, you're rarely going to be the only one that has it. Don't be afraid to stand up and ask the question, put yourself out there, learn something new, and then put that to good use.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you for your time with us, and a pleasure talking to you, learning more about what your organization, the U.S. Treasury, has to do with Geoint. Very interesting. And I'm Adam Simmons of Project Geospatial. We'll talk to everybody next time.
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons here at the Geoint 2023 conference here in St. Louis, Missouri. Yes, we're back here in St. Louis, and this time we have the pleasure of talking with Esri's Tara Mott and Jeff Dolly. Both of you, welcome. Thank you for joining me. And we just got done with the Geoint Forward sessions, correct? And first of all, let's give some quick introductions. Tell me a little bit more about yourselves and your role in the industry. Tara?
All right, Tara Mott. I'm one of the account managers for NGA out here in St. Louis. And I also am one of the working group chairs for USGIF St. Louis Area Working Group that we affectionately call the SLOG. And in my spare time, Jeff, I do actually adjunct in GIS programs at both WashU and St. Louis University.
Great.
Just like up on stage, she's the star. I'm just the person holding the cards here. Jeff Dale, I lead our intelligence programs here at Esri.
Excellent. So both of you got to lead the sessions here for the Geoint Forward. What do we see? What are your highlights? Let's get right into it.
All right. Well, I think this is our fourth year actually sponsoring the Geoint Forward at the symposium, and so we've been emceeing this for at least 3 years together, and it's a lot of fun. So we started off the first keynote. We had Todd Johannesson from NGA Source Foundation, and talking about their data first kind of drive, their foundational digital twin, and kind of some of the different source domains. So he was giving a lot about what NGA is doing to incorporate metaverse technologies into their source work. Then we had a What is the Metaverse panel led by Patrick Cozy from Cesium. And it was really great just kind of hearing some of those myths, realities, like what is it really, kind of helping us define what that metaverse really is. And then one of the next panel that I know I introduced which was really fun. It was a large panel with some brilliant minds, but it was talking about generative AI. And I think I said this earlier, I learned more in 45 minutes than I have in the past 45 years on generative AI. So
it was an excellent panel. They had experts from across the road. They had award winners. They had 40 under 40 recipients there. So and Nadine from OGC moderated that panel just to see what their view was, where they're taking it now and then where they're going in the future. So definitely an interesting perspective on making content to go into AI models. The afternoon was actually started with the poster award session from last year. Jay Eddy won the 2022 poster content, and he's a PhD doctoral scholarship from USGIF, and he presented on his work that he's doing with his academic pursuits. And then we had a separate panel about privacy and security within the metaverse, how it impacts what's the current state and what's also the future state too. Very informative in terms of where things are now, but more importantly, what can be done in the future. I think overall education is key. What are we going to, how can we educate ourselves, our youth, our corporations, our government, in terms of the future of where the metaverse is. And our closing keynote is the Chief of Staff and Deputy Commanding General for TRADOC, Lieutenant General Gervais, who talked about efforts in recruiting, efforts within metaverse since she came over from Futures Command over to TRADOC, lessons learned there. It was a great way to end the day. So very successful day. We are fresh done with it, and so it's always a great way to kick off the great week here in St. Louis and for Geoint.
Excellent. Well, one question for both of you before we wrap up is, from what you saw here with the theme being the metaverse, how surprised were you to see the applicability and the technology in terms of where it is now, and perhaps where do you see it going from here? So
I was very interested just to see how much it's changed just within the past couple of years, how much it went from a concept to people are actually interacting with it now, efforts for recruiting, efforts for retaining staff, efforts for getting training, development, sustainability within organizations. So not only where it's jumped to in a short time frame, but also where it's going to in the future is something that really kind of surprised me, and how many experts are in the field that I didn't realize the association between companies and how they're experiencing or working in the metaverse and what their plan is for the future.
Excellent.
Well, and I liked hearing about that generative AI and really that intersection of Geoint, because you hear about it, but how is it really working together? You hear always about ChatGPT, but personally, I don't have tons of experience in that, and so kind of hearing from them was super helpful to me. I thought one of the key things in your last panel that I know you introduced was talking about the way the regulatory part of it, and how there's just really a lot of unknowns right now.
Yeah.
And so I think that's going to be one of those things that's kind of continuing to evolve and develop, and like how does that really work? Because I think right now it's kind of like a little bit of Wild West. I mean, everybody's kind of playing the game, but we don't know what's going to happen.
And all the speakers had a very good tone with it, that there's a lot of scary stuff that, generative AI, the AI, all things are going to, but there's a lot of opportunity as well. So they had the right balance in terms of where do we need to make sure that we know where things are currently, where it could go for both the positive and the negative for that education to the field, to make sure that everyone is using it for good. And if adversaries are using it for bad, how do we combat that?
Awesome. Well, thank you for recapping Geoint Forward for us and the amazing things that you've seen. So with that said, what's next for Esri?
Well, if you're not busy this July, right? There's a great conference out in San Diego. I think it starts off the weekend of July 8th, our Esri International User Conference. Always a great time. We'll get to see a lot of the same friends here. Typically, we get around 18,000 people that attend that, so it's even bigger than Geoint. You get more of like the commercial, ag, you get different perspectives. So it's not just the int. We do have strong programming related to that, but you see a multitude of people. So that's fun. So that's going to be next on our list to prepare for.
Well, I think the shortest one here is we have a great week in St. Louis and a great week for Geoint. So as much as I'm looking forward to UC, I'm also looking forward to the rest of the week here at Geoint to have a great presence. We have about 40 people that are coming out with strong representation from our St. Louis team and all of the areas that we have within St. Louis and St. Charles and others. So we're very much looking forward to this week. And then round two is in San Diego in July.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining me and giving me an awesome recap. I'm saying awesome too much in this video. So with that said, I'm Adam Simmons here at Project Geospatial. We'll talk to you next time. Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons here at the Geoint Symposium 2023 in St. Louis, Missouri. And I have the pleasure with talking with Danielle and Moody. It's been a few years since we've actually talked to you on camera. Welcome back. You have a new role with a new company called Geosite, correct?
That's right, Adam. Thank you for having me, first of all. I am indeed at Geosite. I'm the CTO of Geosite. And it's been a journey, to say the least, through my career. This is my fourth startup. And I'll just say I feel that it's the culmination of my career meandering through geospatial, and I look forward to talking more about it.
Well, let's get right in it then. Can you help our audience understand a little bit about your background, where you come from, your experiences in the industry as a whole? Just give us a brief synopsis on how you got here today.
Absolutely. So I'm a geoholic, as you guys might imagine. I grew up technically in Los Alamos National Laboratory. I was in the Intelligence Space Research Division for almost 10 years. Had a lot of fun and had the incredible opportunity to work on almost any data type that could be out there, beyond imagery, think radio frequency, telemetry data, satellite data. Got to see some things being built, some things that could have been built better, and then was at this cusp of putting some of this technology into the cloud and large-scale development. And at that point, you realize that some of the latest and greatest machine learning and automation and other state-of-the-art analytics needed to be brought into this fold of broader scale geospatial data beyond the traditional image processing. So I left Llano and I joined Descartes Labs shortly after it was formed. I did have the pleasure of working with the founding team at Descartes Labs while they were still at Los Alamos. And that was a tremendous experience, primarily focused on geospatial analytics on satellite imagery data. And from that point, I evolved then and moved on to Ursa Space Systems. Got to go back to my first love of RF and synthetic aperture radar, which was part of my PhD thesis scope of work. And that was, again, one more thing to add to the portfolio. And after that, I had the chance, and when we were chatting last year, I had the chance to be at Arturo, which was what we would call an undercover geospatial intelligence company. It was primarily focused on insurance. And I know you might not think insurance is a geospatially savvy and a adopting industry, but it very much is. It is driven by need, by customer need, and that's been a niche area that Arturo filled. Late last year, I had the pleasure to be introduced to the Geosite leadership team, and that was an absolute powerhouse. I will say we are right now the only, to my knowledge, geospatial startup in insurtech startup that's completely female-led, and that has been an experience in and of itself. But I very much aligned with the vision and the mission of Geosite to bring clarity and resilience to the world by providing easy access to spatial data as a whole. I saw that as a massive need throughout my career, and having the ability to provide one API for broader use with a purpose that is building it with a user in mind, I found that to be an incredible value proposition. So here I am. I joined Geosite as CTO, and we get to do a lot of fun stuff, grow the team. It's all geospatial data. I couldn't be happier, and it's been an absolute journey. And I do believe that this is the solution that the geospatial world needs, and I look forward to bringing it to the market.
So diving into Geosite a little bit more, let's talk a little bit about the services in detail, right? You mentioned insurance. What else does Geosite do? Or dive into what does that mean? What do you look for in insurance, the services that you provide? And then what else do you do?
So Geosite's been around for a few years. It's not a brand new startup, and it has gone through a couple of pivots. As you might imagine, with the market changing, COVID hitting, it has had to evolve as well as expected. It is an entirely remote distributed company, and early on, it was the vision and the core value of the company never changed. It was always about bringing geospatial data to the market, and what has happened early last year has been this pivot towards let's focus that data usage to the insurance market. And I'll talk a little bit more about why we felt that was critical. Geosite actually had a number of other products that we ended up pivoting and focusing in the insurance market and another very interesting market, which is the reason that I'm here at Geowind, and that is to support Air Force search and rescue coordination centers. And that is, you've probably seen some announcement, that is a contract, a TACFI contract that the company was just awarded, $1.8 million, if I'm not mistaken. And that is to bring into operation a mission management tool for the Air Force to help all of us in case we decide to go on a hike. Or maybe it's not a hike, maybe it's a drive somewhere and we get lost and we now need rescue. And there are things that we did not, I was not aware even until I joined Geosite, but there's a massive undertaking that the Air Force takes over continental, I'll say over land, to coordinate these rescue efforts. At the end of the day, it is about integrating various streams of data in near real time with a very clear outcome of helping save a life, if at all possible. So it is a noble mission, and it also carries a lot of responsibility and risk, because obviously you want to be able to provide the highest fidelity of data in the with the rapid turnaround, with the fastest turnaround, so that you can enable these rescues. So we have this contract with CONUS Air Force Rescue and Coordination Center, as well as Alaska, and it has been it's been a very interesting and I would say non-traditional. Is not the way I normally think about bringing geospatial analytics. So that's been a product that's been undergoing at Geosite for a while. And in doing that, we also realized that it is very important to develop, for somebody to start aggregating geospatial data and analytics in a similar fashion to what you've seen traditionally as a systems integrator, right? We're all familiar with those systems integrators bring about various components and devices to create a map, a bigger system of systems. I start thinking about it the same way when it comes to analytics and data. You have various companies that either provide pixels or sensing of some sort, and then companies that provide analytics. But you do need to have a way to bring them together in the same coordinate system, and it's beyond the simple, I shouldn't say simple because there's nothing simple about it, but it's beyond just a unified geospatial platform. You have to build that with a purpose and with a product in mind. Otherwise, you end up with incredibly cool tech that nobody wants to buy. So this is what caused us to really look at insurance, and this was with the urging of some of our investors. Some of them do come from the insurance side, and they saw a massive market need, which indeed exists, to bring together the various analytic providers and insurtechs that do exist out there and make the spatial data in all its forms and incarnations actually useful to the insurance industry. Why do we care about that as citizens? Well, I would like to know that my claim will be paid faster if there is a hurricane or a storm. And one way that we can speed that up is by providing information, again, rapidly, right? There's an enormous amount of sensing and observation of every point on the ground. That data does not make it into the insurance hands, in the insurance adjuster's hands, or the underwriter's hands, right? So at the end of the day, sure, they do care about the bottom line, but they do need to have a way to ingest this spatial data a way that is easy and smooth and compatible with their current platforms, which are traditional, and they were really built around text data, if you will, think CSVs, which is not exactly compatible with your TIFF or your JSON file. So that is one of the simple things we do, geospatial plumbing, right? So one way to say that would be we do geospatial aggregation of all spatial data and services. At the end of the day, all companies that we talk to need that geospatial plumbing to make their systems work and easily accept all this other data that is currently available. That explained our pivot to insurance, and it has been an incredible journey to actually work with the insurance companies and go above and beyond to understand both their need and coming up with geospatial solutions to their problem. So we offer two products in insurance, or I should say one product. One is an API to the geospatial platform that is of huge interest, right? They want to connect and contract with one API and have, we currently have 60 some partner data that we offer through this API. They want to have this data accessible around their policy and around their user data directly. So that is, like I said, that geospatial cleanup and aggregation bit. And for those that actually need a visualization system, our enhanced product line offers a visualization engine for all their customer claims data alongside all the layers of geospatial data that we ingest from our partners. So it is, I think, a translatable solution to other markets. For now, we try to stay very focused on the insurance industry. There is a huge need, a huge market opportunity. And I do believe, and this is my personal opinion from what our leadership team has seen over the last few months, I do believe that the insurance market as a commercial market is poised to be the first to adopt geospatial data at scale. And we want to be at the forefront of that. And we want to be able to lead that charge and drive that digital transformation that the insurance market is hungry for.
Excellent. So when it comes down to the types of data, or even the premise of this conference this year is obviously wrapped around things like the metaverse and looking at data at scale and maybe virtualizing it from how immersive the data is. Can you talk about perhaps the types of data that you bring in? It's not just imagery, of course. You bring in a lot of other types of data to assess and help your insurance partners out, as well as perhaps your Air Force search and rescue partners too, right?
Yeah, and that is a great question. And fundamentally, it's what makes the spatial platform unified, if you will, over the various market offerings, right? It is a combination, say in the Air Force case, a beacon data that we get from NOAA, emergency beacon, which will be a similar data stream to what you would get over with a maritime emergency beacon, for example. And you might want to bring in base maps of various sorts, contour maps, detailed weather, perhaps alerts and warnings that might impact how the logistics of that search and rescue mission will go. You might have to bring in things like, and these are all the data sets that we bring in, maybe it's open data, right, public data. It just needs to be cleaned up and brought in the same place so that that coordination can happen similarly. Now, when you look at an insurance side, and a similar user persona would be a claims adjuster. You just had a massive event happening, let's say a hurricane. Let's pick Hurricane Ian. That is actually one of the proof of concepts that we worked on with a couple of our customers to speed up their claims reserving. So Hurricane Ian hits. We know of it, right? There's data that indicates there are forecast models. There are hurricane intensity, hurricane risk models. We do have data before the storm. So we may have high-resolution aerial data from their partners out there that think of a Vexel GIC that offers that high-resolution aerial data, and you can run then analytic models on top of that data, and those are also some of the partners that we work with, to extract quickly ahead of time over all the properties you're considering, what is the roof type, what are the what features are on a particular parcel and property, right? What are things you need to worry about? Are there trampolines? Are there pools? What is the roof condition, right? That also matters when it comes to impact from the storm. So you want to stage ahead and prep, if you will, for these storms that come in, right? And we have that ready then in the platform with our customers to say, these are your policies. This is what's coming. These are the risk model exposures. So these might be climate type models and risk models, flooding models that are obviously pre-event, but they help drive that understanding and quantification of risk, which is a huge need in the insurance industry. And then you have the actual event, right? Now you talk about like live observation data, right? Whether it's weather type geospatial data, so think of a partner like Spire that we work with, and bringing in not just weather data, but actual flood observation data. Say it was a hurricane, there was a massive amount of flood. We work with ISI, we work with Ursa Space, to say get that in situ extent of the flood and flood depth, which matter again a lot for our carriers, right? And then you also might have post-event data to start seeing what type of damage is indicated by gray sky collections of imagery, which are these airborne missions that fly 5 to 7 days after an event. So to us, geospatial data for an event is in a way an event management center, which is similar to that mission management tool that we built for Air Force conceptually, right? Different data streams, but at the core of it, it's all about bringing the same data into the same platform and providing that very rapid, unique API turnaround. And then on top of that, there'll be thin clients, right, that are providing that visualization to see, right, what you need to see.
Excellent. And I guess my last question for you is how much of this data, how much of your products that you provide, services you provide, how much of that is automated with machine learning, and how much of it is kind of manually driven between the maybe models that haven't been driven off of objects that are a little bit tougher to create training data sets for?
Yeah, and this might be a longer answer because this is a topic near and dear to my heart, right? So at the end of the day, one of the reasons I'm excited about Geosight is it enables us to provide and bring about the machine learning understanding that's a contextual understanding, right? We're here talking about the metaverse and the geospatial data in the context of a metaverse. One of the things that we believe in at Geosight is that you need to understand almost a 4D view of a location or a place and a time to really get the benefits of all the spatial data that's out there. Of course, we can do a lot of that data by using as much automation as possible, and that's what we built into our platform, right? Everything needs to be automated in terms of ingest, delivery, and also then go a step further and start building one of the things we do, for example, is this automated geocoding consensus algorithm, right? And I'd like to take a second at the end and talk more about the geocoding in particular, but we want to be able to build and provide to our customers an automated, think of it as a recommendation engine, right? For this problem, for this question, these are the data sets you should look at. One of the things we find frequently with our customers is the deluge of information is almost too much. And you can't just, there's no such thing as one data layer answering all the questions. So you do have to provide this set of, here are the 10, the 11, the 12 that are most important to answer your questions. So we do seek to make all our products as automated as possible. I do believe machine learning is going to be the key to helping us provide these products in the best way possible for our customers. We cannot shy away from that, not in this current day and age. But we do still have humans in the loop helping to drive the integration, the automation, especially the QA, QC. Now, I mentioned the geocoding, and that is a huge component of what we do. Because at the end of the day, if you have a claim somewhere or you have a policy somewhere, it is the most important first thing is to know where it is. And whether or not your actual house footprint is in the flood area or outside the flood area will make a huge difference. So in a lot of the cases that we see, we have to provide not just the access to the geospatial layers, but also do that cleanup and that prep of the data that also includes that geocoding cleanup and correction if needed to make sure that you're looking at the right place, right? And that enables the rest. So going back to your question, the goal will be that everything is automated and we leverage machine learning as much as possible. I am not personally believing that they'll ever replace our job. We do believe in the machine learning enabled and empowered analyst. And I will say in the insurance industry, I have been very, very pleasantly surprised by how much excitement and eagerness there is to adopt machine learning, right? They don't see it as a job replacement. They see it as extra job security because all of a sudden they can process more and they can do more things with machine learning and automation. So that has been one of the reasons why we've been so excited to also work with the insurance industry.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for your time with us. And where can people find out more about Geosite if they're curious about learning?
You can go to geosite.io, look us up online. I'm also on LinkedIn. Drop us a line or send us a message at info@geosite.io.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us and telling us about your company and the experience you've had leading up to it. And congratulations on your new role.
Thank you, Adam.
Well, that's a wrap. Thank you. This is Adam Simmons with Project Geospatial here at Geoint 2023 in St. Louis, Missouri. We'll talk to everybody next time. Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons here at Geoint 2023 here in St. Louis, Missouri, and I am back happy to have Tom Ager on with us. Tom is a radar expert in the industry. I can't even undersell that. He's amazing in the industry. He knows a lot, and probably no one in the industry knows more about the radar industry more than him right now. So I know I'm
making me uncomfortable. Those things are not true, but go ahead.
Okay, well, how about you talk about yourself a little bit, and we'll go from there and dive right into the topic of finding out a little bit more about the status of the entire community.
All right, so Tom Ager. People misunderstand how much I know about SAR. I'm actually trained as a photogrammetrist and geodesist. That's what I learned in graduate school, and that's what I did in the first half of my career at NGA. Halfway through, I picked up a SAR project, and it changed my career. I began to love SAR, and I'm actually self-taught on SAR. I became the SAR program manager in NGA, and so I got this unearned reputation of being an expert. Certainly, I know a lot about it, but I worked with brilliant people who are the real SAR scientists, people like Jack Jackowitz from Sandia, for example, and other wonderful people who helped me. So I always called myself a technically skilled program manager. And one thing I tried to do all through my career is teach technical things to my coworkers. I did that for photogrammetry and geodesy, and I did it later for SAR. And recently, after I left, I wrote a book on SAR, which Adam interviewed me about. But that book is for normal professionals, not electrical engineers. But I do have a big view of how things work for SAR and what the industry is like, yeah.
You're helping define SAR to everybody else, and that's great. We need that translation between the two media.
Yes, because SAR is inherently odd, and it was developed by brilliant electrical engineers who speak in a language most of us can't understand. And so it has this electrical engineering heritage and a weirdness, which are two challenges, and I try to make it look beautiful because it is beautiful, and you can understand it without having to know all of the advanced mathematics. That's what I'm trying to do.
That's great. So diving into the topic of this discussion with you today, we want to learn more about your thoughts on the SAR industry as it is now, and perhaps where it's going here in the future.
Yeah, so the revolution in SAR, well, a little over a decade ago, we had the wonderful emergence of TerraSAR-X, Cosmos SkyMed, and RadarSat-2, very capable, unclassified SAR spacecraft. But those systems, and it was very exciting to see that happen, and I was involved in trying to promote them. Unfortunately, their international systems in the United States didn't have an interest in purchasing the data very much, although NGA did access the world DEM produced by the TerraSAR-X and TandemX system. But those systems are partly government funded, they're pseudo-commercial. Since then, we've had fully commercial SAR systems developed with venture capital money. And that is, in the United States, Capella, ISI, and Umbra, they're all here at Geoint, and the international version of ISI in Finland, and Japanese systems since Synspective. And so that is a real revolution, because these are little tiny SARs compared to the giant ones. A lot of people thought it could never work. Well, it's working. And I like to say those guys are operating at the intersection of user need and what physics and economics will allow. So it makes them be very flexible, customer-focused, and not try to do everything. They're doing things without trying to bend physics, and they're constrained by having to make money. So they're doing small satellites, and they're revolutionizing remote sensing in that way.
So talking about how things are now, what are you seeing at this conference in terms of the different SAR providers out there? The progress we've made thus far has been incredible, right? If where we were even 10 years ago,
Yes.
you know, we've come a long way.
Yes. Yeah. So these little SAR companies, these SAR companies are building fleets of small SARs, lots of them. And so that's a real revolution in remote sensing, because SAR is the only sensor that can guarantee you a collection. So we're going to be able to get collection anywhere in the world quickly. And the images are relatively low cost. The satellites are much cheaper, of course, and they can be built much quicker than the big systems. So if you do that, though, you lose something. You can't go to something so massive and expensive to something little without losing something. So what do you lose? One thing you lose is orbital duty cycle. That is, the number of images they can collect per orbit is very low in comparison to the big guys. They lose on lifespan. RadarSat 1 lasted for 19 years. These little SARs, they're spec'd for 3 years, and they're probably going to last 3 years or so. And you lose on signal to noise. I'd like to address that one separately, but say for the first two, while those are impediments, sometimes impediments are opportunities. So the lack of imaging time per orbit really doesn't matter if you have a whole fleet of them, because it's what the fleet can do that matters, not how much you can do per. If you're going to have 30 satellites, you're still going to have massive collection capacity. And maybe all of these sensors, all of these companies will have tens of satellites. And the lifespan, while it's limited, that can be an advantage too, because you can put up a new one relatively cheaply and quickly with new technology, right? So the lifespan I don't care about. You can upgrade the hardware timely rather than having to wait 15 years. So signal to noise, though, is the challenge for spaceborne SAR. So why is that a challenge? So I'd like to just teach a little thing to you here so we can appreciate why is signal to noise such a problem for little SARs. So when we send a pulse out, we send thousands per second. Let's just look at one pulse. Here it goes. It's going to leave the antenna. Boom. There it goes. For ISI, that pulse is 3,000 watts. Okay, so it's a nice, strong, young pulse. There it goes. It goes down to the ground, and it starts to widen as it goes to the ground. It's like inflating a balloon. And when you inflate a balloon, what happens to the skin? It gets thin.
Yeah.
So the power density of this pulse weakens with the square of the distance. It's got to go like 700 kilometers. It hits something on the ground. Only a portion of it reflects. And as it comes back, it weakens again with the square of the distance. So you've got this really weak return coming back to a small antenna. It can only capture a little bit of that return. So if the pulse left at 3,000 watts, what would you guess is the strength of it when it hits the antenna?
Oh, I'm guessing a exponentially decreased form of that.
Would you say 100 watts, 10 watts? It's 10 to the negative 17 watts.
Wow.
Yes. See, since I'm an outsider, when I learned these things, I was astounded. Electrical engineer would say, well, what do you expect?
Yeah.
So when I first saw that, calculated, I made a mistake. I did it again, 10 to the 17 watts. I got it again. I did another form of the equation, same answer. Showed it to somebody. Oh, yeah, that's how it works. So this thing that comes back is so enfeebled. It's so weak. Any noise is a challenge for it, right? Well, what's noise on SAR? Well, noise is any microwave hitting that antenna that's not that signal. So where would other microwaves be coming from? Why would other microwaves hit the antenna? Well, one source is wonderful. You know it. You've heard of it. It's called the cosmic background microwave radiation.
Oh, yeah.
From the Big Bang. Those are microwaves, and they've been traveling across the universe for 13 billion years, and some of them smack into the antenna. So some of the dots you see on a SAR image are signals from the Big Bang. I think that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
How wonderful is that?
Now,
That's wonderful.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Probably a whole separate science could be focused on that alone.
And the system can't distinguish them from the real microwaves, from the signals. They're the same. But that's not the main source of noise on SAR. The fundamental principle of remote sensing is that all objects above absolute zero emit electromagnetic radiation. The recorder on the sensor, the receiver, it operates at a temperature, so it emits microwaves. So I like to call this the poignant story of signals and noise, because the receiver itself creates microwaves that confuse it,
Yeah.
right? So it's creating microwaves that it thinks are the reflected signal, so it does it to itself, and we can't stop it unless we can put up receivers that operate at absolute zero. That's not going to happen. So this is called thermal noise. So noise is always going to occur on a SAR image. And what you need for that is a strong pulse. That 3,000 watt thing from ISO, that's pretty strong. But you need a big antenna. These are little SARs. They don't have big antennas, right? So that's their challenge. So the signal to noise ratio for these little guys isn't as good as it is for the real big guys. And that's one of the things you give up. One thing you don't give up, resolution. And that's astonishing. Why? Well, there's two aspects to resolution on SAR. You would think, well, it's a little SAR, it can't operate so good, my resolution's going to be limited. That's not true. One is azimuth. When you fly this way, you look off to the side. All right, so I'm flying into the camera. I look off to the side. This direction, the flight direction, is called azimuth. And the longer you image in that direction, the better the azimuth resolution. So I'm sending pulses up, and I'm staring at something. It's called spotlight mode. It's like sending my energy all to the same point on the ground like a spotlight. And in this forum, just this week, ISI, and I'm not trying to promote ISI, the other guys are going to do this too, okay? They just announced a form of spotlight imaging they call dwell. Why do they call it dwell? Because they're imaging this spot on the ground for 25 seconds.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So what's that mean? Satellite's flying at 7.5 kilometers per second for 25 seconds. That means it's traveled almost 190 kilometers during that collect. So the synthetic aperture length is 190 kilometers. It is as if you have an antenna in space 190 kilometers long. What do you think the resolution in azimuth is for that collect? I'm interviewing you.
Oh, boy.
It's real below a meter. It's 5 centimeters.
5 centimeters. I was going to say below 15 centimeters, so I would have been on the right.
Centimeters, people.
Yeah.
Whoa. Now, range is the other dimension. And range, the resolution in the range is a function of how much we chirp the pulse. That is, we send a pulse out, but we vary the frequency of the pulse, like a bird's chirp. That right now is like 300 million cycles per second or so, and that will give you on the ground roughly a meter. Soon it will be 600, so that's going to be half a meter. Then it's going to go to 1,200 megahertz. That's a quarter meter on the ground.
So So talk about the use cases for this type of capability that we're now seeing.
Okay, before I get to that, I want to make this point about resolution.
Okay.
The resolution of the little baby SARs will be those numbers I just mentioned within 2 years. Good. That's crazy. And it won't really get better than that, even 10 or 20 years from now, because once you make your aperture length that long, to make it longer imposes collection and processing burdens, which are difficult to deal with. And 5 centimeters pretty freaking good anyway, right?
Yeah.
The other one in range is limited by the International Telecommunications Union, which says you can't have a pulse bandwidth bigger than 1200 megahertz because it interferes with other signals like 5G. They're not going to let that happen. So 5 centimeters in azimuth, a quarter meter in range within 2 years. That's shocking.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe. And a challenge for the United States is this is what technology allows to happen at low cost. Are we going to constrain that by licenses? We do now. But I like to think of it this way. We invented SAR. That was done Goodyear Aerospace, 1950s, Carl Wiley. We invented it. That's our daughter. She left home. She traveled the world. She speaks German, Italian, Spanish, Finnish, Japanese. And if we tell her to come home at midnight, she's not going to do it, right? So we don't control it anymore. And internationally, what I just said is going to happen. Already happening today, you saw. So this is a question for us. What can we do? And I think it's out of our control, at least internationally. So the use cases for this is, of course, people love resolution and people are going to be asking for high resolution. And that's what, of course, some other people want wide area coverage. We can do that too, to find ships at sea and things like that, to look at changing ice fields. You don't need high resolution for that, and people care about those things a lot. But mostly it will be high resolution, and it's getting done now by the little SARs. Where? In the Ukraine-Russia conflict. See how valuable, unclassified, shareable, guaranteed collection in bad weather is being done by the Ukrainians all the time to see Russian mechanized equipment where it is.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to learn how to use SAR, when this is over, I'd go talk to the Ukrainians because they know, right? That's a use case.
Awesome. Amazing.
Yeah.
So in terms of what you see the current status of the companies that exist right now, I mean, there's a lot of companies that are SAR that are there that have emerged in recent years. You feel like the collaborations is a lot better than it was 10 years ago, or do you feel like we're moving in the right direction that SAR is now starting to become more integrated, commercial SAR is more integrated into the U.S. government?
Well, when TerraSAR, Cosmo, RadarSat-2 were all launched, there was a ComSAR working group, USGIF managed it. I was involved. And those companies, all competitors, all collaborated on things of mutual interest.
Yes, they did.
That's not happening now. And I think all those companies would benefit if that happened now. Because there are a few things they all care about which would benefit all of them. Like, how do you evaluate the quality of an image? Right now in the government, we do that with analysts reviewing scores of images manually, very slowly. I think that can be automated with calibrated data, and you can come up with a new way to do that that's more precise and much faster, right? That would benefit the government and these companies, and I think that's something we all need to discuss. I've been talking to them a little bit about it, and I hope that happens. That's a collaboration that will help everybody.
Well, so a next topic is with the amount of data we're going to be getting here, well, even now with the amount of SAR out there, there's a lot of talk about the integration of AI and ML for quite some time. Yes. So can you talk about your thoughts about that topic?
Yeah, I can. First of all, I'm no expert on AI and ML. It is, of course, really important, and we see things that now are shocking us with ChatGPT and all of that. It's unbelievable. And people are pursuing that. You see it all through this conference. People throw the terms around a lot, and some of that's going to work in the near term for SAR. We need it to work. Things like detecting a ship. SAR is good at seeing big metal things. That's a big metal thing, usually on a dark background, the ocean. So detecting ships in ports and at sea, I think AI and ML is going to be very good at that in the near term. But there's other things that are really difficult for it. Find me and identify a T-72 tank. Well, the background for that is not the ocean, it's the ground, so there's more clutter around the object. The signal for the object varies depending on which way it's facing, which way the energy came, which way the turret is pointing. So for software to know what that is and say, it would need a million different images of it, and that's just one feat.
Large, more training data sets than it would take for the normal electro-optical.
Yes, yes. And I know there's companies here making simulated data. That's the way to go, because you're not going to have collections. But
it'd be expensive.
Really hard to do. That's all. And I think it's getting oversold a little bit. Of course, we got to pursue it. I'm enthusiastic about it, but I think we talk about it with a little bit too much optimism. To achieve anything in science, you need two engines: openness and skepticism. And I think in this case, our skepticism engine needs a little bit more fuel. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
All right.
Well, is there any other points you'd like to make about the SAR industry, where it's at or where it's going, as we close up our conversation today?
Yeah, I have one last point to make. So while we're going to pursue AI and ML and automated extraction of information, we have to do that. We still need people looking at SAR images and analyzing them. You know, we're going to need human beings to do that. I'm sorry, that's the case. So what do we do now for those guys? We collect all of this data. We form an image. And by the way, that image is a complex image. It's called that. It has amplitude information and phase information. Remember, SAR is a coherent collect. It's got phase. That's really, really valuable data. But for you to look at it, you can't look at a complex image. So I'm going to process that to make you a grayscale image. And when I do that, I just threw away all the phase. So the heart of SAR, its beating heart, is its coherence. I just threw that all away. You don't have it. You're going to exploit that image. Now, if you want that, you have to do a special order and get something else. We can make a really useful product from phase called the color subaperture image. And some of the little SARs are now starting to make these things. What's a color subaperture image? Well, remember, I'm collecting an azimuth for a long time. That gives me my azimuth resolution. So imagine, instead of keeping the entire synthetic aperture, I just processed the first half of it. I could still make an image. It would have azimuth resolution reduced by 2, right? But I can make a second image out of the second half of the aperture. And then I have 2 images and I can overlay them. Suppose I do that with 3 of them. I split the aperture into 3 portions. I make the first one red, the second green, the third blue. If the reflections are the same, when I overlap those, they look gray. And you would see the normal grayscale image you're used to. But suppose in the first image here, there is a Russian mechanized troop transport thing right there, which in the first part of the aperture glints, strong reflection. On that thing, it's going to show up red. You're going to see it red. So SAR reflects off of things with straight lines and cubic structures. Nature doesn't build things like that. Humans do. So this color subaperture image shows colors for glints, and those tend to be human-made objects. So if you want that now, you order a regular grayscale image, and then I'm going to put in an order for a CSI image and deliver that to me, and I have this one, and maybe I pay for both of them. Whereas what we should do is the image is a complex image, right? Amplitude and phase. We need to make that easily orderable, easily exploitable. How can you do that? Well, you can output the complex image in amplitude and phase instead of You may have heard of in-phase and quadrature. What the hell is that? The real and imaginary numbers. It's crazy for SAR. Simple thing, amplitude and phase, and put it in GeoTIFF. So I can give you a complex image in GeoTIFF, and your socket GXP or remote view, wherever you have, will be able to read it. It doesn't even know it's a complex image. It just sees the phase as a separate layer, like in multispectral. It won't be able to do anything with it yet, but it has it. And you're going to have the full res data, not some multi-look, lower resolution thing. And then somebody's going to write an app to do something with the phase so that you can make your own color subaperture image fast. And so you could say, I'm going to look at this I'm going to go talk, by the way, to BAE about this today, and then the other guys. We give you a complex image in GeoTIFF. Your existing tool can read it, and then someday soon, I hope, you've got apps to mess with the phase data. Make me this, make me that, and it happens fast. So you can have the full res grayscale image, a multi-look grayscale image with less speckle, a color subaperture image, and none of that is magic. We know how to do that. 11 years ago, we demoed in this Geoint symposium a laptop. All we had was a laptop with a browser. All of our data was 800 miles away in Michigan. I forget where we were, Tampa or someplace. We had complex data in Michigan, and we had that laptop, and we had a server with these apps I'm talking about. And 11 years ago, we were making color subaperture image. Make me one. It would make it. Make me this. It would make it. That was 11 years ago. So I have a question for you. You're interviewing me. Do you think hardware processing muscle has improved over the last decade?
No.
Yeah. Do you think app coding has improved in 11 years?
Improved? Yes.
Yes.
I do, actually.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we can do these things, but we'll never do it if we can't imagine it. And I think, of course, AI and ML is crucially important, but it's also important to understand the SAR image is a complex image, and to make it easily ingestible and exploitable, we can put it out in cloud-optimized GeoTIFF in amplitude and phase. That's what we should.
Well, I wanted to circle back to the human element where we started that conversation with. And before we end, I would like to get your thoughts on, because obviously with all this technology, all the sensors, the talent is important too. We have to have people who know how to look at this, trained in it. And what are your thoughts on basically the education? Let's ignore the technology for a second and focus on the education part of this. What's your thoughts about bringing more talent into the SAR industry?
I'm worried about technical education in America in general.
Fair.
You know? Right. So how good are we at teaching physics and mathematics to people in high school and in college? I don't think we're doing a good enough job in that. And I don't know the current staffing in these agencies. But when I was a young guy, DMA encouraged me to go to Virginia Tech to learn photogrammetry and geodesy, and they paid for it.
Yeah.
And that changed my career.
So SAR specifically, do you know about the pipelines in colleges and universities now that focus on even...
I think we're losing it. I think the great, brilliant radar people I once knew are getting older like me, and I'm not one of them. I said that to begin, and retiring, and I don't believe they're getting replaced.
So you think we're struggling? A lot of the aging professionals are reaching a point where, we're going to have a lot of gaps in our knowledge base for not technology as a whole, but specifically it could be for the SAR industry, which is ironic because SAR is exploding right now. You know, it's starting to be everywhere.
Yes.
So at what point do you think we're going to be, in a critical space where now we have all this demand, it's all there, but now where's all the talent to look at it and understand it?
I can only say, I think the emergence of the little SARs will help solve this problem because you're going to need people.
Yeah.
And they should go to universities and encourage young physicists or engineers to follow this field because there's a good career path in it.
Yeah.
I think in Europe, they may be doing a better job. When I visited ISI in Finland, that place was loaded with young engineers from all over Europe, so many different countries. It was very invigorating to be around them. And maybe we need to recruit some people overseas and not just from the United States if we don't have enough.
Well, thank you very much for your insights, Tom. It was amazing having a conversation with you. Even your book is still as popular as ever. And I'm glad to see you teaching what you know to others. I think that's obviously the bigger thing we need to fill right now, not just the technology understanding, but just to bring more people to understanding the value of this and participating in it.
Okay, well, thanks for inviting me to speak to you today. I appreciate what you're doing with Project Geospatial.
No. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'm Adam Simmons of Project Geospatial. We'll talk to everybody next time. Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons, and we're here at Geoint 2023 in St. Louis, Missouri. And here with us is, Gabe Dominicello.
You said it right.
Thank you. Finally. Awesome. You are co-founder of Umbra Space, and you are an amazing US-based SAR company. And we've talked to Joe Morrison last year, and you are known for an amazing business plan that's literally rattling the face of the SAR industry right now. And so before we dive into all that from a premise standpoint, can you talk a little bit about yourself and how you got into this industry and maybe how you started Umbra?
Well, I mean...
Loaded questions.
I'm not a space guy.
Yeah.
I never was. My co-founder, my very good friend, came up with this idea years ago, and he's like maybe the smartest person. He's always the smartest guy in the room. He's a very, very intelligent guy. And if you're going to start a business, you should probably start it with the smartest person you know. And he opened up my world to this industry, which I've now fallen in love with. But I opened up his world to like kind of the rest of commerce, so to speak, which is like, it may work for the space industry right now, but can the space industry evolve? And that's what our premise is, which I think we've been hinting at.
Excellent. So you label yourself more as a finance guy?
Dude, I don't know. I'm just a guy.
I
don't have a. Well, I'm not a finance. I'm not anything special. I'm a guy on the street who looks at problems and says, could we solve these problems in a different way?
Yeah. Well, that gets us into Umbra Space. So talk to me about the business plan, what you're striving to do. It's not just simply a SAR constellation. It's literally how you're executing and delivering to your customers, right?
Well, the entire premise of the company is to deliver products in the way that humans are used to receiving products.
Yes.
So we're often criticized for selling data over the internet, which is, to me, does not seem like that crazy of an idea. But in the traditional model, you have like a guy who goes with another BD guy and they have a nice steak dinner, and then they negotiate prices and NDAs and all these things. And that you can literally buy anything on the internet.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you can't buy satellite data until now, which you can.
So what does that get into in terms of some of the nuances that you've seen in terms of the, the barriers you're trying to break with the industry, right? Traditionally, whether that be licensing or how you obtain, what did you see the industry like before you're trying to solve this problem? You said accessibility. Why can't everybody buy
by images?
Well, it's we when we started 8 years ago, it's a long time
Yeah.
in doing this. We talked to customers, and all the customer complaints were exactly the same. It is the data is I sell it, I can't show it to my mom. So it's like, okay, well, why don't we just do a permissive Creative Commons license? It's like I can't get the data. It's always negotiated. It's very, very difficult to acquire. It's like, okay, well, why don't we just provide the data easily through an online platform? And then pricing. So pricing was a huge issue. Satellite data is extremely expensive.
And SAR especially.
SAR was extremely expensive. It's funny, 6 years ago, I did an interview. It was our first interview with Space News, and I said, we are going to charge less or the same as optical. And everyone's like, startup's going to charge the same as optical. And now I think we charge considerably less. And the reason for that is our systems capability. So we took all those problems and we said, how can we design a satellite that solves all those problems while, we can make money? Because making money is what this is all about.
Yeah. So in terms of getting new customers on board with your, not just platform, but your constellation, can you talk to me about some of those incentives? You mentioned the Creative Commons licensing. Maybe how does that apply towards commercialization of that? Do you have sample data available? How does that work?
So my premise has been get data into the hands of users.
Yes.
So we have a massive sample data set that is refreshed, I think, every day. So right now, it was 10. We're expanding it. There's 10 targets imaged every single day. We want to make sure that people can look at a time series, understand it. It's free. It's Creative Commons. We want people to be familiar with the data. Data of this quality has not been widely accessible in the past from a spacecraft, only from an airplane.
Wow. Okay. So, and talk to me about your constellation as it exists today. When we were talking with you last year, it was a lot different. You've had a couple launches and successes.
Got a lot.
Yeah.
Like launching, I was talking to somebody, I was talking to an investor over the weekend. And he's like, so you got like 2 satellites now. It's like 6.
Yeah.
And so we have 6 up. We have 2 more, I don't know, in Q4. But I'll tell you that I don't know that I can say the exact date.
That's fine.
Because of our agreement with SpaceX. And then another 2 in Q1. But we're not the company that's like, we're going to launch 100 satellites.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm a guy on the street. Asset depreciation is something that makes me very nervous. So we are not going to launch satellites unless they make money, period.
That makes sense. So yeah, 6 up right now, and that promotes what are you capable of in terms of, you mentioned daily revisit rate right now. Does that apply global targets?
We can see any point on Earth twice daily per satellite.
Okay. And we are talking still half-meter resolution for SAR?
We can go down to quarter meter is what we're publicly giving out. We can go down to 16.
Incredible.
And 16 is pretty cool.
It is. No, I don't. I can't beat it. My mouth is dropping. I have a hard time talking about it because it's like it is incredible imagery. Highly recommend people check it out.
Yeah, we put a lot of stuff on Twitter. It's kind of ramshackle how we do it. It's like just put it out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand SAR, so depending on the incidence angle, it's going to look different, but it looks very good.
So talk to me about the sentiment or the reaction by the community, the typical traditional community, either government or other industries who are interested in buying your imagery. What's the reaction by them? What's the engagement look like? Were they kind of non-believers at first, or did they jump right in, and you've turned them over towards being your evangelist, right?
Well, I think it's an interesting question because I think that people still don't believe us.
Yeah.
No matter how much I give it away or put it out on the internet, it's everyone. The people who are adopting in full force.
Yeah.
So I look at the market like it's a supply-demand equilibrium curve, right? So if you are a purchaser of satellite data and you are an early adopter of the data, because we charge so much less. So our pricing is on the website. It's transparent. It's not change. You're getting data for significantly less than your competitors as an analytics company. We also do not do analytics, so we're not competing with our customers. So if you are an adopter of our data, you are intrinsically getting a better product for less money. And if you do not buy it, you'll be buying a more expensive product that is worse. And I don't know how long that lasts.
Okay.
If you're a business, I mean, I don't know, would you buy gold for 10 times the price? At the end of the day, data is a commodity.
Yes.
Or at least it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm trying to do is commoditize it as quickly as possible.
So how's that? How do you see the industry today reacting towards what you're doing?
Well, I think the providers don't like it, but the customers seem to like it. I mean, do you want better things for less money?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you have a number of new partnerships and contracts,
Tons,
right? It's been great.
Oh, man.
Over the last couple of months, especially.
Well, I mean, the big one, of course, is Maxar.
Yes.
Which everyone knows. Maxar's like, I don't know, when some people are growing up, like they want to be a firefighter or a doctor or whatever. When I was growing up, I wanted to do a deal with a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. So, so my dreams have come true. So Maxar, and then of course you have the regular analytics guys. We're partnered with almost all of them. Yeah, I love our partners, and we have such a frictionless relationship. So knowing that we do not do analytics allows them to trust us in a way that they cannot trust some other providers.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I don't care what you're looking at, just give me the $500 for a picture.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to take advantage of their business model down the road and
I don't
recreate
care
it.
Yeah. I don't care who I don't care who they're selling. Well, I mean, hold on. I care who they're selling the data to, so long as it is an allied, allied with the United States, because we're an American company. The government is our strongest ally and our biggest and best partner. So like, as long as you're not going to do anything that would piss off the US government, I don't care who you sell it to.
So what's ahead for the company? Yeah, you've had a lot of successes. You've checked a lot of milestones along the way. You got this new imagery out there with incredible licensing capabilities and incredible pricing. What are your next steps?
Is to build. So, I mean, and not build satellites, to be clear. Like I've seen in this industry, and I'm going to blame the VCs, that you have, in software, if you build a product that is successful, then it says, okay, iterate on that product, advertise that product, and expand it. So they took that model and applied it to hardware. And they're like, okay, great, reprint this satellite 100 times. So let's say you're getting a couple images over a high demand area, call it Texas, where I live, because everyone wants to see my house. So you see my house in Texas, and let's say you're getting 10 images. And the VCs go, well, if we launch 100 satellites, then we'll get so many more images, and then that revenue will scale.
Yeah.
But what they did not realize, and what we were able to observe, is that you don't sell pictures of stuff. You sell pictures of high demand areas. And the asset depreciation becomes such that over that high demand area, you can't make money if you scale your constellation too large. So we are looking at it in a very different way, which is rather than launch one satellite that, let's say, takes 2 pictures over Texas, we'll launch one satellite like the ones that we have in space that can take 20 or 30 pictures over Texas. And the way that we're iterating is a new version of the satellite. So it is like, rather than launching 10, we're just going to launch one that is 10 times better. And we're going to continue to do that.
Okay.
Like, we're continually going to compete with ourselves.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you for joining us for this discussion. Any last minute words that you'd like to get out to our audience about who Umbra Space is and what you provide to the community?
Look, we're a highly customer-driven company. We're a highly logical company. We want to make sure that our customers do well. So if you work with us, we will work for you. We'll make sure that you're successful if you use our data. But thanks for having me on. I love all your work.
Always a pleasure, Gabe. This is Adam Simmons of Project Geospatial here at the Geoint 2023 Symposium here in St. Louis, Missouri. We'll talk to everybody next time.
Hi, I'm Joe Calamari with Project Geospatial here at the Geoint 2023 Symposium. And I'm at Synthetics booth with Corey Jaskolski. Sorry.
Nice to meet you.
So, Corey, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got introduced to the industry?
You bet. Yeah. So my background is AI and ML, but I had kind of an eclectic career background. I did a lot of work developing edge-based AI and processors for government applications, and then ended up joining National Geographic, where I used AI and technology to do things in the geospatial world, like 3D scan Mount Everest to look for vegetation growth up the side with climate change, and also a lot of mapping and 3D scanning with AI for anti-poaching applications and things like that.
Awesome. How did that lead you over to Synthetic?
So Synthetic grew out of a lot of that work because AI actually fails more often than it succeeds. It's sort of the dirty secret in AI. Nobody wants you to know that, but it does. And the problem generally is data. It's the amount of labeled data that you need to train an AI. When you see an AI, maybe that if you pull out your cell phone and you try to focus on a cat or a dog, and your phone automatically does that on an animal like a cat, it's because somebody trained an AI to do that by labeling many cat images. And that means they went and drew boxes around lots of pictures of cats until an AI learned to do that. And it sounds easy, but really, as AI models have gotten bigger and bigger, you're not looking at doing that on a couple images of cats, you're looking at millions or billions. So when a company like Google or Facebook trains an AI model, they're literally training on billions of labeled images. So the question became, how do you do that in a geospatial application? How do you find Russian tanks, or how do you find something even more rare, Chinese spy balloons, where nobody ever has seen an image of it from space, so you don't have any labeled data? So we started Synthetic to answer the question, what if you didn't need labeled data? What if you could actually build an AI without pre-trained models, without labels, and find effectively anything? What might you be able to do?
Yeah. So you touched on this a little bit, but I love the phrase, what goes up will be found. So could you talk a little bit about like these recent use cases like that spy balloon that you guys found?
You bet. Yeah, a really good use case for Rake, our product, was the Chinese spy balloon. So when the Chinese spy balloon came across the United States, we started thinking, hey, could we actually find this in satellite data? And the problem is again, with AI, you normally train an AI model on labeled data. Since nobody had found a balloon in a satellite data before, we actually hand drew what we thought this balloon would look like in planet satellite data. So we hand drew this balloon, and we fed in the entire state of South Carolina because we knew the balloon got shot down right off the coast. And we searched the planet data with our algorithm across that data set, and we found the balloon in 2 minutes from our hand drawing. And from there, now that we had a real image of the balloon, Rake could adapt to that, and we actually traced it back through the United States, and then ultimately all the way back to its launch point in Hainan with, I think, a total of 12 hits along its entire journey.
Ah, that's amazing. Now, is this Rake that you have up here?
This is, yeah. So, all right, so this is Rake, and what Rake does is you give it a single example, whether it's a hand drawing of the Chinese balloon, or in this case, I drew a box around this full dumpster in Milwaukee. And so I drew this box around it. I don't have a pre-trained model. I didn't have labeled data. And what it did is it searched across all of Milwaukee, all of these million or so map tiles, for other things that look like this. And what it returns is a similarity map. And this actually works in a way that's sort of similar to ChatGPT. ChatGPT doesn't know what English language is or what the words are. It maps it into a mathematical space, and then when you ask it a question, it knows how to put the words together in a response. We're doing something sort of similar to that in Pixospace. But our response from our query was that image of a dumpster. Our response is other things that look similar throughout Milwaukee. So what Rake has done already is found these full dumpsters throughout Milwaukee. And what we can do, it's a human-machine collaboration. So we can actually take our little polygon tool here. We can draw a box around the things that we say, yep, Rake, you did a good job. Those are all dumpsters. That's not a dumpster. This is a pickup truck with stuff in the back of it. You can see why Rake might think that's a dumpster, but it's not. So we can nudge Rake by saying, these are the things that I want you to really focus on. These are legitimate dumpsters. And then Rake will take that feedback from us, and it will refine itself and continue to learn over time. So in this case, though, we already located the dumpsters throughout Milwaukee, and we can drill in here and find dumpsters in people's backyards that are maybe doing home construction, and other scenarios here where we can actually find something like that. So here's a dumpster in a yard that we found from our original query. So we can take this across commercial data or defense and intelligence data and literally search at scale across, in this case, the city of Milwaukee, but in other cases, the entire globe or the country of China, for example, and find all of the objects we're looking for.
Well, that was great. Thank you. So we're over here in the kind of AI neighborhood of the symposium right now. So could you tell us a little bit about what differentiates you guys from everybody else in this block?
Yeah, our differentiator is really the ability to build an AI model in seconds without any labeled data or pre-trained models. So we consider it effectively a really, really fast, simple search tool that can also then build an AI in just a few minutes. And so that the differentiation there is that without the need for that labeled data, you basically can eliminate that whole, sometimes thousands of people labeling data over months before you can even have an AI to start with. We can develop these answers in tactical timeframes and let people derive answers just in a few seconds. The other thing that really differentiates us, though, is once we've ingested data into Rake, normally when you run an AI, you've built an AI to find that one thing. You run it, and now you say, ooh, I also want to find, fighter jets. You need to build a new AI. You need to run it again across the data. With Rake, you actually, once you've ingested into Rake, you can search for anything you want forevermore, even if it's something you didn't think you wanted to find when you already ingested the data set. So,
Wow, that's great. So as we're wrapping up now here, do you have any final words about what you would like these people to know about synthetic?
yeah, I think what we'd like people to know about synthetic is now there's a new tool available that allows you to build an AI to find things in data sets that doesn't require pre-labeled data and millions of dollars of labeling work, but it also doesn't require a big data science or AI team. We certainly have lots of customers that have big data science and AI teams that are using it. But even if you're a smaller company that is just looking to drive insights from data immediately, Rake can do that.
Awesome. So where can they find you? Reach out for some more info.
You can reach out on synthetic.com. Synthetic is spelled funny. It's an AI instead of the I in synthetic. So you can reach out to us at synthetic.com and learn a lot more about what we're doing.
Great. Thanks, Corey.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
I'm Joe, Project Geospatial. See you next time.
Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons, here at the Geoint 2023 Symposium in St. Louis, Missouri. And here with me, we have an interesting individual to talk about his company at Geoint. And please go ahead and introduce yourself. We'll get right into it.
Hi, Clint Grauman with Newview. This is, I think, my 15th year to be attending Geoint, and it's always great. It's nice to see old friends catch up in the industry, and this year is especially exciting for Newview, our company, because we recently came out of stealth mode 2 weeks ago, and we're building the world's first constellation of LiDAR imaging satellites.
That is impressive. So, and it should not be confused with hyperspectral or anything else that does. So LiDAR in space, that's an interesting concept. Most LiDAR systems are done with aerial platforms today, right?
Yeah, so most LiDAR systems today are done with aerial. They're done with UAVs or drones. And one of the things that we saw was that there's this huge pent-up demand for LiDAR imagery around the world. And for the last 15 years that I've been in this business, I've worked with companies and consulted in hyperspectral and thermal and radar. And what we've continuously heard from our customers is that they always seem to say, wouldn't this be great if we had some LiDAR to go with it? So we did some really deep investigation and customer discovery to understand the problem more deeply. And what we've discovered is it's roughly 5% of the Earth that's ever been mapped with LiDAR. And that's just due to constraints of supply. With an airplane, you can map hundreds of square kilometers in a week. With the UAV, maybe tens of square kilometers per week. But with the LiDAR system that we're building, we're projecting that we're going to be able to map millions of square kilometers in a week. And so that's going to unlock the entire supply chain when it comes to LiDAR.
So what are we talking about from a launch standpoint? Being put up in the air, how big do you plan on your constellation being? That type of thing.
Yeah, that's the real key with LiDAR. LiDAR is a different animal altogether than imaging with SAR or optical. And it's really some sort of hybrid of both, but with ultra precision. So to be able to accomplish our mission, which is map the entire land surface of the Earth with LiDAR once per year, we're going to build quite the large constellation. We're building 20 of them. We're going to be launching them 5 at a time over the next several years, and that's going to build up our capacity over time. And so at the end of everything that we're building in the mission, the main thing that we want to achieve is foundation Geoint, which means we're going to build what we believe is going to be the most accurate and changing and evolving global DEM that the world's ever seen.
Wow, that's incredible. So that the biggest rival on that was the SAR satellites, but obviously they have a lot of issues of their own where LiDAR can fill those gaps. So what are the big struggles and milestones that you're looking to overcome as you begin to put your constellation up in orbit?
You know, I actually disagree a little bit that SAR is going to be our biggest rival. I think we're going to be great friends with the SAR guys, and I think we're going to be great friends with the optical providers as well. With one of the unique capabilities of LiDAR providing really accurate accuracy, really high accuracy data in elevation, so in the Z. We think that's going to make us great partners to all these other imagery providers that can increase the accuracy of their data. And we look at a global DEM as a huge project that is really challenging for anyone. But working as a team, we do believe that a rising tide will lift all boats, and it's a collaborative effort. The unique thing that our LiDAR system will bring to the table is being able to image and collect a surface model as well as a terrain model in the same collection period. We think that's going to be an evolution in how DEMs are made at a global level. We've loved the World DEM that was produced by Airbus. We know that the guys out there like Capella are producing great data as well. Planet, Maxar. We want to be partners with all these guys.
Okay, so fair enough. That's great, complementing each other rather than being more competitive. So when you have this constellation up, how long would you say it would take to revisit, we'll say, or create a brand new World DEM model of your own, from having 20 satellites up in orbit? You know, what's that kind of cycle per se?
Right. Yeah, so the main objective on getting to that World DEM is starting at the country level. I think we're an ideal data source for a program like 3DEP with the USGS. But when we look at mapping the entire world, as we get the constellation launched, doing 5 at a time, it's not going to happen all at once. The mission, after several iterations of launches, is to be able to do it on an annual basis. So once per year, map the entire globe. But it's going to take us 5 or 6 years to do it the first time, once we've started our initial commercial launch.
Awesome. Okay. So for your customers and your potential customers at a conference like this, what kinds of products or what kinds of output, what I'm sure you're working on what the platform could potentially look like for them to interact with this type of data, because at the scale you're talking about, your customers you'll have access to loads more amount of data than ever had before through aerial and drone, right?
Yeah, and that's the whole value proposition is not only are we going to provide the gold standard of a world DEM, but we're going to provide that DEM that constantly updates, and you'll be able to consume it in layers. So we know that's going to be a massive data set that we're going to have to host in a cloud, of course, in a cloud infrastructure, and then give our customers, especially at the governmental and enterprise level, streaming access to that data. And then we'll also have a platform where partners can come in and either task that satellite data set for unique things that they want to collect on the fly, or tap into that huge database to pull down only what they need.
Awesome. So at Geoint 2023 this year, just kind of reshifting gears,
sure.
What are you getting out of the conference?
You know, I think the thing that I'm getting out of this conference is that not only in other industries, but in this industry specifically, we're starting to see the industry turn the corner on AI and machine learning capabilities. It's been talked about for a long time. But we think that that's really exciting to see the industry pivot in a direction that we think makes LiDAR extremely accessible. When you're working with optical or radar data, radar is not quite as visual as optical and being able to work with it, but LiDAR is really meant for machines and AI. Each individual point is a very discrete data point with its own values, and that just opens up to billions of data points that machine learning and AI capabilities, I think, are going to be able to uncover things that a human just isn't going to be able to on their own.
It's too overwhelming for for humans and the workforce needed to extract it, right? So we finally reached that technological threshold where now the technology meets the sensor.
Yeah, and it's been an evolution as well on getting to the type of hardware and capabilities in the industry that have finally made LiDAR possible from space. We've seen a couple of science missions with NASA and ESA that have gone up, but from a commercial standpoint, what we've been waiting on is capabilities like AI and machine learning to be able to digest huge amounts of data and interpret it. But in addition, we've gotten to a point where small satellite buses can produce the amount of power that you need. We've gotten to the point where single photon counting is a capability from space that can happen. Power requirements for running the laser. All of this stuff, plus some proprietary IP, which we've got some patents that are pending on, have come together kind of at the same time. And no one of those things can unlock the entire ecosystem, but we've gotten to a point where they've all kind of converged at the same time.
Excellent. Well, as we wrap up, any last minute words regarding your company and what you hope to see going forward?
Yeah, so one of the things that I love about the geospatial world is that it's so collaborative. And it's something we've kept at the forefront. We're building a company that is a partner-first strategy, and we want to develop that partner network around the world. And if there are organizations that have been LiDAR starved and want to contribute to the geospatial melting pot of data that they're working with, we'd love to hear from them and find the opportunity to work together.
Well, thank you for joining us and talking to us, giving us more insight into the company and who you are. I'm Adam Simmons of Project Geospatial. We'll talk to everybody next time. Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons, and I have the pleasure of coming back to an awesome company that is focused on synthetic data, Rendered.ai. And here with me to talk about synthetic data is Chris Andrews. Chris, can you go ahead and give an introduction to yourself and how you got started in the industry?
Sure, and thank you very much for hosting me, Adam. It's been great to be in touch with you over the last couple of years, and we really appreciated the previous episode that you did on us. So, my background is pretty heavily in the geospatial industry. I actually built my own kind of GIS for my master's work back in the 90s, and then I knew somebody who had been through one of the early GIS programs at SUNY Buffalo, and she basically saw what I did and said, "Hey, you'd be perfect for this GIS stuff." And so I ended up teaching myself GIS, starting with ArcView 2 and programming on Avenue back in the 90s in college. And then I actually taught the first GIS classes at the University of Rochester, where I went. After graduating, I ended up having programming skills and GIS skills, which were far more valuable than ecology and evolutionary biology degrees back then. And so that ended up getting me into startups. I went through a couple small startups that didn't pan out. And then I ended up in enterprise consulting, first at the Kennedy Space Center, working on a base-wide GIS, and then later in the utilities industry, real property, and a couple other industries, mostly working with large project-oriented consulting firms like Idea Integration and a company that used to be called MWH Global. But I got a ton of exposure to everything from Oracle, Java, enterprise bus tech to a ton of database programming, all kinds of stuff that evolved around all different types of GIS applications and integration. I ended up wanting to change my career around and started writing articles. And then ironically, that actually is what got me into Autodesk a couple years later. And I ended up going into Autodesk as first on a business development team, And then I literally got hijacked to be a product manager on their 3D digital cities effort. That is where I really got a start in the intersection of 3D and geospatial. And it was very early. That was 2008. There were a lot of topics that were in discussion, such as reality capture, the whole concept that you could kind of cook 3D buildings for a city from satellite imagery was actually being done then at a very low res kind of level by folks like Kobe and the French government. I got to meet and work with a bunch of different folks like that, but it definitely started to get me steeped into the combination of that reality capture, snapshot, 3D modeling of the real world, along with procedural data and kind of synthetic generation of content to also populate digital cities. I personally have built a couple L systems generators. We acquired a company called 3D Geo when I was with Autodesk. And then later when I went to Esri, underneath me was also a product that's still out there, and that is a procedural generator called City Engine that I'm sure some of your listeners have heard of. Um, I was at Autodesk for about 7 years, mostly in the infrastructure group. I did a brief stunt doing a 3D visualization startup for them in the life sciences, actually. And then I spent about 18 months in their film and game group as well. After leaving Geospatial, I decided I wanted to get back into it. And so after a little bit, I ended up at Esri as their 3D product manager. I started off as an individual contributor there. And then after 7 years there, I was one of their 4 product management leads. I had about 20 product managers under me. We had around 45 products covering somewhere around 45 to 50 million in direct revenue, and then a whole lot more in indirect. And that included, I helped get ArcGIS Earth started. I worked with Theo Azalopoulos at Autodesk to get the Autodesk Esri partnership started, and that led to a bunch of product development, including Geoborn, a product that is actually going really well out there now. I helped participate in writing some of the specs for I3S, the 3D streaming format that Esri has offered, and that's now gone through OGC. And so you can see there's been a couple common threads in that I touched a lot of real world domains, a lot of geospatial stuff, a lot of 3D in different shapes, 3D for like regular users who could care less what the technology is underneath, but also 3D for some deep experts. And after that whole career arc, I decided I wanted to get back to smaller companies where I had a bit more direct input into the success or failure of the company. And I interviewed with a variety of small startups and ended up landing with Nathan Quinces, the CEO and primary founder of Rendered AI. And what I loved about his pitch was that he was talking about a couple things that were really, really appealing to me. A new application of technology in an existing domain in a way that has the opportunity to explode and be used widely across that domain. And then technology that also actually solves real or helps people solve real business problems. Like I said, I spent a little bit of time in film and game. I like film and game. I like to play them, but working on film and game tech directly doesn't really drive me. But helping customers solve real problems that make a difference in their daily life in terms of whether their business is going to be successful or not, that really does drive me quite a lot. So I got this great pitch about synthetic data and the opportunity to create baked data to help train computer vision models from Nathan. And at first I kind of walked away from that first conversation thinking, this seems kind of fantastical. But the more that I thought about it and a couple other follow-up calls, it convinced me that it was absolutely the kind of opportunity that I was looking for. And I've been with the company for 18 months and it's been fantastic.
Well, thanks for that overview. So getting into it a little bit, can you talk about, give us a definition of what synthetic data actually is? It's a broad term, but for our industry, it means something very specific.
Yes, that's right. So when I talk about synthetic data, as I just referenced a little bit in my career arc, I've had exposure with a variety of different types of synthetic content or computer generated or computer derived content that can be used for a whole bunch of different purposes. When I say synthetic data, I'm talking about engineered, generated, simulated data with annotation and metadata specifically used to train or validate or test machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms. So synthetic data for me is not just a single model or a single, a single scene in 3D. It's actually a synthetic data set is a file folder or zip file or maybe a full drive full of training image chips that were all generated out of some kind of digital process, typically some kind of rendering system, and that is using a 3D scene and 3D assets, and then other 3D tools and techniques to specifically output a desired set of pixels that match the characteristics of real sensor data, and that also are spit out with labels, annotation, to be able to tell you exactly what is at which pixel in each image. And these data sets that I'm talking about can range from 100 images to 10,000 images to even many more.
I think that's the key right there, right? So we kind of, to take it another level up, you are literally generating artificial overhead, satellite, or aerial imagery in different sensor modes, correct?
That's right. That's right. The fundamental problem that we are trying to address is that today, if you approach most people in the computer vision market today, most people in the machine learning, the whole data science realm today, typically start off using real data sets. In the structured data space, the form field data, like the forms that you fill in online, there is potential application of certain types of synthetic data, but I'm going to stay away from that today. We typically focus on the unstructured space. So all of that sensor data that is being collected from out in space, you can talk about satellites looking at Earth. You can talk about different types of sensors looking at the Earth, radar sensors, hyperspectral, multispectral, RGB, panchromatic. You can also even talk about satellites looking at other satellites and satellites looking at other parts of the solar system. Then to aerial imagery, to truck mounted, boat mounted, backpack mounted. And then you can even talk about computer vision content being things like microscope video. So actually at Rendered, we focus on unstructured synthetic data, and we actually provide a platform and technology that can be applied to just about any type of computer vision synthetic content. Our customers are typically trying to apply computer vision to some real sensor domain, and they're running into one of several common problems that are experienced when you're working with real sensor data. Labeling existing sensor data can be very expensive and inaccurate, and in fact, in some cases, can be almost impossible. Sometimes humans are actually really bad at looking at things like hyperspectral imagery or radar imagery and then interpreting that accurately for labeling. In some cases, real data may have privacy constraints or other security constraints that make it hard to get. In many cases, folks who are typically used to only working with real data sets are, in their heads, they're just focusing on scraping together whatever data they can get their hands on to try to push through algorithms and training processes. So
it's not just a pricing issue. It's also about it's also just plain acquiring the data could be a hassle in a lot of different mediums. So even the business model of acquiring imagery well, it's tedious, it's painful. But then you also have the issue with machine learning that you need a lot of it, the scaling issue. I need a ton of data in this one type of sensor. It's not just expensive, but I need so much that the traditional platforms, the traditional providers do not know how to give it to me for my use case, right?
That is definitely the case. If you look at especially things like rare and unusual objects or scenarios of unusual objects, so it may not matter so much that you see a tanker ship or a gasoline fueling truck in a particular piece of imagery, but it may be very important when that fueling truck is next to another truck of a specific type. Getting enough enough data samples to train an algorithm to recognize those two types of trucks in that specific scenario can be extremely costly. And for some types of imagery, you may be talking $1,000 an image. So if you need hundreds or thousands to train an algorithm, that gets really expensive very fast. And so if you can simulate imagery of whatever type you want, whether it's SAR or hyperspectral or just plain old RGB satellite at various resolutions, then conceivably you could generate very large data sets with these kind of scenarios. So, perfect, not quite perfect or idealized is not the right word, but with the scenarios that you're actually looking for, and then use synthetic data to train algorithms. In some cases, that may be good enough. In other cases, what you may be doing is training an algorithm to sift through a library of existing images to find more examples that a human couldn't find when they were looking through thousands and thousands of images. So yeah, it's not just.
Well, that naturally brings forth a couple different questions, right? So first of all, what's the level of effort to get this data generated? Let's say a customer comes with a requirement like, hey, I need 1,000 images based off of this type of object. So what's the level of effort to generate that and the timeline? And then part two is what's the level of quality? Because I think there is a stigma behind, if it's simulated, there has to be some kind of catch, is it too biased towards the simulated data, or can it actually look for real world objects based off of this training data? So there's questions in the quality too, right? Can you talk about that in terms of demystifying some of these questions for our audience?
Yeah. So, and there are a couple different aspects to that question. One is, and we get this question a lot, is how do we know that our data is good quality? And that's kind of an amusing question in itself, because in some cases, customers actually want bad quality data. One example is a customer in the defense realm looking at remote sensing imagery used synthetic data to demonstrate that they could, use synthetic data from render to demonstrate that they could train to look for objects in a specific type of imagery. And then they wanted to also demonstrate that if they did something absurd in that generated imagery, that their algorithms would correctly fail as they expected. And so in that particular case, they took a color modifier and they painted every one of their objects of interest yellow. And you would never see these objects be yellow in the real world, but they were really happy because what happened was their algorithm correctly performed on real data and synthetic data when applied to objects that you'd expect it to find. And then when they applied the algorithm at the canary yellow objects, it failed. The process to the process to get started with synthetic data is sometimes more considered than a lot of customers at first believe it will be. We do often get folks coming to us just saying, can we get 1,000 images from you, or 500 or 10,000? In reality, we've seen that approach almost always fails. So we could generate 1,000 images for a variety of different scenarios that we might have different types of prior art for synthetic data channels, everything from DeerSig, which is a physically accurate simulator maintained by RIT, to our own SAR simulator, to RGB satellite imagery. We could generate conceivably image chips for a customer and just hand them over. But what happens is customers who are asking for those image chips are typically still in the mindset of, I'm just going to scrape together whatever I can get and then see how it works, real data or synthetic data. The opportunity with synthetic data is that you can change it. So you can try something and then maybe it doesn't quite work, and maybe you have some ideas why, and we actually give folks some tools for helping investigate differences in data sets. And so then maybe you can actually make some changes to the generated data and get another data set and then test that and see if it works better. And if so, keep going until you actually achieve a desired level of performance that fits your problem set. Synthetic data generation is not a one-step process. It is typically an iterative process that requires feedback between data scientists and the folks who are doing the simulation modeling or scenario generation. That is actually the kind of the heart of the synthetic data creation pipeline. So it's not as simple as just coming to us and asking for data. Our platform is built upon the idea that we actually provide a platform that does compute management, job management, team collaboration. And then on top of that platform, you deploy these containerized simulations. Each simulation is called a synthetic data channel. And that synthetic data channel basically is the universe of variation and prioritization that you need to develop to generate a variety of data sets that allow you to train and test the algorithms that you're working on.
No, thank you. So getting into it a little bit even further, can you talk about some more details about the quality of the data? Obviously, things have improved, but it is a question you get all the time. How accurate is synthetic data? Can you talk to me about that a little bit? And of course, I understand you're also coming from a bit of a biased perspective on that too. But I'm sure you understand. Obviously, the data is as good as you design it to be, but to some extent, people have a lot of concerns about it, right? So,
yeah, so it's so tough to say what's the quality, because the quality is determined by, at one level, by your success in meeting your training objectives, and training objectives can vary very widely between customer scenarios. One, for example, we have a whole set of customers who come to us who don't even have a sensor deployed in the field. Think about companies that are putting up future satellites. So one example that's been publicly disclosed is Planet. And Planet is using us to generate synthetic hyperspectral images in anticipation of their future satellite launches. And the quality is high in the sense that we actually work with a third party, Riverside Research, who has vetted that the synthetic data is physically accurate. We're using DeerSig, this high quality U.S. government supported physically accurate render, and we're outputting imagery, multi-channel hyperspectral images, these massive multi-channel TIFFs that are effectively what Planet will be getting off of a satellite.
And that's a very great use case. It's more of a general approach to say, here's some examples of what our sensor could potentially look like before it launches. I think the more folks who are more skeptical of it has to go with, hey, I want to create machine learning algorithm on just making cars. Can you accurately simulate satellite imagery that looks like a bunch of cars are on the ground, for example? And obviously that could be synonymous for nearly any generic object, but something like that.
Yes, the original server that that helped get a lot of our platform efforts started is with Orbital Insight, and the NGA, and the original project there was actually attempting to identify improve algorithms to identify difficult to label objects like construction cranes in the XView data set, which is a real satellite imagery data set. That project, phase one of that server, actually used r- rendered AI to generate synthetic imagery, and they were able to demonstrate that they were able to not only detect construction cranes and a couple other unusual objects with very high increase the precision of detection. They also were able to show that they were able to train algorithms with far fewer images than they required if they were using only real images. We we have had numerous customers achieve their training objectives using synthetic satellite imagery generated out of rendered, much of which was based upon some of the initial technology that was used to do the orbital project. That orbital NGA project has been continued. We've been working on this phase two for the last year and a half, and we absolutely see a variety of paths that customers are taking. If they can't get any data and what they're looking for is warm hits, then they can use purely synthetic data sets out of rendered. In some cases, they may post-process them to make them even more like real data. We provide the ability to do what's called style transfer or domain adaptation using a cyclogram. So you can train a cyclogram algorithm on real data sets that are similar to what you'll be looking for. Then you can generate synthetic data sets, render them out of rendered, and then you can, in our system, you can actually apply the cyclogram to make the simulated data look even more like the real data to an AI. For other customers who maybe already are achieving some level of performance in a scenario, they may actually end up using a mix of both synthetic and real data to kind of incrementally improve the algorithms the algorithm performance that they're training. I can say we've had repeat business. We've also had cases where, in one case, a customer in a hurry used us to generate oblique marine imagery looking for distant objects. And they were so successful with only synthetic data that they actually terminated their subscription early, which is not something that was great for us on one level, but it was fantastic for us on the level that we were sure we could help them. And they really had a hard time getting real data ahead of the exercise they were participating in, and they were able to use it. And on day one of the exercise, demonstrated that they had achieved a level of detection with synthetic data only that exceeded the initial requirements that they had. So it's the quality of the data. We've seen some cases where the quality is extremely high in the sense that we've met the training objectives. In many cases, the imagery, and I'll share some with you, the imagery can look just like photos to the human eye. The trick is, it doesn't really matter what a human thinks. It's what does an algorithm think, right? So the important nuance of synthetic data is that it needs to be successful for the algorithm training or validation process that's being done on that data. And some of our customers do get a little bit stuck on that. They may think that they have a specific they may think they may be able to judge the quality of data, but data quality can be really interestingly subtle. One example is what we had one partner use rendered to introduce variation in synthetic imagery. And one type of variation they introduced is called pose variation. So they were changing the camera angle, looking at the object of interest, which is a manufactured part in this case. And later they realized that in their real world system, there is no pose variation. So they'd actually degraded the quality of the synthetic data, not from a look and feel perspective, but by introducing a type of variability that doesn't actually exist in the real system that they're monitoring. So if I hedge a little bit on data quality, it's because data quality means many different things to many different people and can be,
Absolutely. But, I think the point was, can it fool another human's eyes? I think your initial question was, or your answer was yes. Can it be used to train an algorithm successfully on objects that someone's looking for? I think you've also demonstrated that answer is also yes. So we've come a long way from just this being conceptual. Even in the beginning of the company, you've had a lot of success, but even then you were having a lot of lessons learned, even a couple of years later, even today. Which actually brings me to my next question is, how has the technology changed over the last couple of years to improve and get things better? And maybe you want to also touch on how you are not focused on generative AI, right?
Yep. I can definitely address that. Uh, the technology that Rendered uses is fundamentally technology that started back in the late 70s and the 80s, right? It started out with early 3D rendering and modeling technology. And that has come a huge way and has actually improved exponentially in just the last couple of years. So we may use a renderer, including things like Blender, an open source package, or our own SAR simulator is our own rendering system. DeerSig is another one. NVIDIA Omniverse, we're an NVIDIA Inception partner. All of these technologies have had investment that have greatly been able to do things like take advantage of modern GPUs and job parallelization. A lot of 3D rendering is multiple passes across the same scene, and in the old days, those passes were stacked up sequentially, and these days you don't have to do that synchronous processing. So there's a lot more that can be done in the same amount of time in terms of basically generating pixels that emulate the pixels that would be captured from a real world sensor. That is ultimately what we're trying to do. And so the technologies to enable us to do that today are far beyond where they were even just a couple of years ago. We also are benefiting tremendously from cloud capabilities. One of the value props of Rendered is that we can mask some of the complexity that someone would have to take on if they were to set up their own rendering farm and compute management system in the cloud. We work almost exclusively with Amazon and AWS, and we have benefited tremendously from changes that Amazon has made to enable you to spin up different types of instances, increasing the size of instances and increasing access to GPUs. And even, for example, we're hoping to work more with NVIDIA and Amazon together in the near future around the fact that there are now Omniverse GPU capable instances available in Amazon. So it's really great to see some of these big technology companies are coming together to provide combined offerings that are going to enable even more. We are seeing some interesting changes in the market very recently. The explosion around conversational AI, generative AI, diffusion models has really changed the conversation with some customers. I'd say even a year ago, we were more often having to explain what synthetic data was from a very first principles level, right? It's fake data that is designed to be physically accurate. That conversation has decreased to some extent because many people now have heard of synthetic content or synthetic data, but they immediately jump to the idea that, oh, well, then we must be using stable diffusion or some kind of generative AI technology to generate synthetic data. In fact, that's a little misleading. We don't use diffusion models or other generative techniques, generative AI techniques, to directly generate every image chip that comes out of rendered. Unfortunately, when you use most of those technologies today, you do not know what is at which pixel in the image. So you may be able to feed an algorithm a description looking for an elephant standing in the grass in front of a tree with a blue sky, and you may get 1,000 pictures of elephants standing in the grass with trees and blue sky, but you actually there's no pixel level labeling that is possible today on that type of imagery. You're also not guaranteed that your elephant is actually anatomically correct to an algorithm. The elephant may look pretty darn good to a human, but the elephant is the derived output of an interpolated basically process that changes pixels around until the pixels end up fitting into this probability space that says that, that there's a very high probability that this particular combination of pixels represents elephant, grass, tree, and sky. But there's no ability to go in and define bounding boxes or specific pixel masks, so it's that you know exactly what is where in each image. That is a key value of what we do in terms of simulator generated data, synthetic data for AI training with rendered. You actually know exactly where each object is, where all the classifications are. If you're doing, say, classifying generated crops, has simulated crops in synthetic imagery. So we are seeing quite a bit of new tech start to be talked about in the market, and some of that tech is actually more relevant in the structured data side of the market. But when it comes to computer vision, unstructured content, we can use some generative techniques to support parts of the synthetic data process, but you're still fundamentally talking about using 3D simulation technologies to generate data. And that does remain hard. And part of our job is trying to make that easier for people to access.
No, thank you. So how do you see this technology evolving over the next 3 to 5 years? You've touched on how it's changed, but obviously based off of potentially, maybe you can touch on some of the lessons learned along the way that you've had, and maybe a couple of surprises that you've had along the way, like, oh, wow, we didn't know we could do this. And perhaps that's going to lead to some interesting innovations coming out.
I think that one of the things maybe that just sets the table for like why we're going to see a lot more improvement in the ability to put synthetic data generation capability into more users' hands over the next few years. It's just the massive amount of data that's going to be collected and the need to extract information from that data. You've got, what is it? 100 times as many Earth observation satellites are going to be up there in 10 to 15 years. You've got sensorization of everything around us, from doorbells to lights in every store that you're in, have cameras in them now, to your vehicles, to all of the equipment along transportation routes. We are sensorizing everything, and part of the reason for sensorizing everything is to monitor mostly to monitor and count things. And all that monitoring and counting is going to be done with algorithms. All of those algorithms need to be trained, and it is not possible to have all the data that is required to train those, especially for rare, unusual events, ostriches crossing the road in Tesla.
Especially despite the amount of data that keeps on scaling up, the democratization of that data hasn't necessarily come about, and the pricing of that data has relatively maintained itself.
For sure. And human labeling of data is expensive at the end of the day, regardless of what the local, labor rates are, wherever you send that data. It is very expensive in quantity. And much of the data won't even need to be labeled, right? Your Ring or Nest camera looking out from your door is going to be staring at a static scene for most of the day. And it's pointless to be having a human sit there and try to label the unusual raccoon or whatever that happens to wander by once in a while. Synthetic data allows you to generate specific scenarios, outrageous scenarios. There was a example where some U.S. military members were able to trick a robot by dressing up as trees and boxes and fooling its algorithm. Well, you know what? When they trained the algorithm on real data, and nobody thought to dress up the people in the training example as trees or boxes. That kind of absurd scenario could easily be generated with synthetic content. What we will need to do in order to make synthetic data creation more accessible to real customers is, one, we need to remember that data scientists don't want to be 3D modelers, right? Data scientists would love to use conversational AI to say, I need 1,000 images of this particular plane sitting on a runway in areas that look a lot like desert or like particular snowy forest or something like that. And then in the background to have the synthetic data generation toolkit basically use that prompt to then find, source, or generate 3D models that are then assembled into a scene in the right environmental conditions and then used to generate real data. That type of making it much easier for a user to get to the data they need without having high technical skills to do simulation or 3D modeling or programming, that is the direction that things are absolutely going to go. We have already started some work there. We're playing around with enabling synthetic data engineers, the folks who will do some of the coding on top of the simulation framework that we provide for rendered. We're right now experimenting with using ChatGPT to help kind of speed up that coding process. Once we get there, we'd actually be able to then move toward just prompt development or prompt engineering for the synthetic data channel. And it's easy to see that it's going to be possible. This company's only been around for 4 years, and so if you talk the next 3 to 5 years, it's that will be as long as rendered's been around, and I expect things to be looking very different in the next 4 years for sure.
Awesome. As we approach closing, I want to actually present one more question to you. So as it applies to render.ai specifically, what are, if a customer came to you and said, what are 3 or 4 things that I should come to Rendered for with the specific problem sets? I should come to Rendered for these reasons.
You should come to Rendered if you can't get enough of the data that you need today to train algorithms. You should come to us because we have a very good record of jumping in and helping our customers get to success. We've had some very happy customers work with us. You should also come and work with us because we are, as far as I know right now, we are the only company that has looked at synthetic data as a broad problem across computer vision and provides a platform that can handle a variety of computer vision use cases. Part of the reason for that is because we know that your computer vision problems are going to change. The things that the sensors you're using are going to change. The objects you're looking for or the classifications you're trying to make are going to change. And so you can work with us into the future to be able to use our capability and our know-how and our expert advice to help support you as your training needs, as your computer vision needs change into the future.
Awesome. Thank you. Any last minute shout outs or plugs for anything that we talked about or render.ai specifically?
I just wanted to thank you very much, Adam, and Project Geospatial for hosting us and giving us this opportunity. It's so fun to be able to be participating in the geospatial market from a different angle, and it's been thoroughly great to see where things have gone in the last year and a half, and I'm sure that we're going to be even more relevant across the geospatial market in the future.
No, I am just as interested and it's amazing just sharing your story and diving into what synthetic data is and tracking rendered through the last couple of years and seeing how you grow. I'm really fascinated to take a deep dive at some point with the data that you have and really expose how useful it is to the broader community. I think there's a huge need for it. And so I'm excited. Once again, I'm excited to share your story and share with the bigger community. So thank you very much for joining us. And we will talk to everybody next time. Don't forget, check out Rendered at rendered.ai. And that is their website too. Right on. The world is changing. Technology is advancing at an unprecedented rate, and new frontiers are opening up every day. One of the most exciting of these frontiers is the metaverse. It's a term that's been buzzing around in tech circles for a while now, but what exactly is it? And what does it mean for the future of our geospatial industry? I'm Adam Simmons of Project Geospatial, and in this segment, that's what we seek to find out, as we take a look at what one company is doing as they fully immerse themselves in this new way of interacting with data. So let's dive right in. To help us understand what the metaverse is, we have Josh Weiner, Senior Director of Global Sales with Maxar, and Sydney Cortez, Project Manager on Strategic Partners at Maxar.
So what is the metaverse to me, and what does it really mean to Maxar from a geospatial perspective? I like to look at the metaverse, or really spell the metaverse, first of all, with a lowercase m. It's not a single entity that is to be defined, but it is really a virtual world or virtual worlds that are a interoperable environment that people and things can come and interact with each other in. At Maxar, we're excited to be able to provide the geospatial foundation for a realistic base map in 3D that the metaverse can leverage and that we can interact with in that metaverse.
I think of the metaverse as a shared, immersive, dynamic, persistent 3D space where people can connect, learn, shop, and more. What Maxar brings to the table is that geospatial 3D foundation for it, and we have the two product offerings with Precision 3D and Sim 3D. To expand on that a little bit more, though, because that was a pretty generic definition, I think some of the key elements of the metaverse are going to be interoperability, right? Because by the strictest kind of definition of metaverse, it's, one metaverse to rule them all. And I think that in reality, what we're going to see is what I'm seeing others refer to as kind of a multiverse of metaverses, where we need to be able to kind of bounce around and play around, much like we do on the internet, but in a 3D kind of immersive experience.
As we're traveling along this path to discover what the metaverse is, we're also realizing that we need to define concepts such as what is a digital twin? What is it as it relates to the metaverse? And what is it as it relates to traditional forms of 3D visualization?
So the term digital twin, I do think it's different than the metaverse. It's not really synonymous. a digital twin is something that I envision interacting with or really residing within a metaverse or the metaverse. A digital twin, to me, really is that third dimension of development. If you think about how humans have been interacting with representations of objects or even our planet for centuries in the form of blueprints or architectural plans or maps, it's always been that second dimension. Fast forward to really the turn of the last century, around the year 2000, the shuttle radar topography mission was launched, where we started to map the world in 3D, but it was at a coarse resolution, right? 30 meters per pixel. So we had that global scale, but we didn't have the resolution of what you would consider a twin, certainly not an identical twin. So to me, the digital twin is when you can combine the global scale and the resolution where something really does look exactly the way it does on Earth. From a geospatial perspective, of course, we're talking about a 3D map. At Maxar, we are excited to provide that 3D data with both the resolution and the global scalability to enable you to go anywhere in a virtual world, in a metaverse, and interact with the world as a twin, as a digital twin.
Yeah, I think conceptually, the metaverse, 3D representation being the term, 10, 20 years ago, for that, what we're looking at now, I think that it is kind of beyond that, because even today, for the general kind of user, 3D visualization is just that. It's something that you look at, you may kind of pan and tilt and whirl around, but to me, the real key and that next step is actually immersing yourself in that environment and being able to experience like what that 3D, kind of feels like. And what's lacking in 3D visualization, right, is that feeling of like, I can look up here, I can, kind of sense here. And so that to me is really the next piece, is that immersiveness, the interactiveness, and the ability to interact with it. We're seeing this in gaming because I think that, some of those world building games could arguably be defined as metaverses. But we want to bring this to our industry a little bit more. We're seeing great strides in entertainment, but we want to kind of pull it out beyond that.
So now that we've loosely defined what the metaverse is, or at least as it applies to the geospatial industry, let's figure out what those use cases are. How does our industry use the metaverse? How does it take advantage of it from a business case? Let's explore what Maxar is doing there.
As far as use cases go, at Maxar and within our industry, there are a lot of different use cases for how a digital twin is used in a metaverse environment. The use cases span consumer applications, enterprise or commercial use cases, non-government or GDO applications, and of course, government use cases, which perhaps are the most apparent. From a consumer perspective, I'm an avid outdoorsman. I like to mountain bike and I like to ski, and I like to track a lot of these type of adventures and experiences in a map. And with the third dimension added to these maps, as we're starting to see with really the biggest mapping platforms out there as far as adventure tracking goes, companies like Strava and Trailforks, these maps are now available in 3D where you can route plan more effectively. You can understand slope angles if you're skiing in the backcountry. You can understand how challenging a climb might be on your bike. And it's often that these consumer needs and these consumer opportunities are driving a lot of the enterprise and even the government innovation. From an enterprise perspective, we're seeing a interesting coordination of timing where just as the 5th generation or 5G networks are being rolled out from a telco perspective, just as vehicles are moving into an autonomous state, whether it's cars or drones or even airplanes, we're also seeing the enabling technology of digital twins come on board at the same time. And it's tough to say if it's a chicken or egg scenario, because we're also seeing other hardware and tech enablers come on at the same time. Things like cloud storage and compute, GPU processing capabilities that enable us to view virtual worlds at really high resolution, at really fast frame rates, and within virtual environments that make them feel real. All of this coming together creates these great opportunities for enterprise, for government, for GDOs to make better decisions and to create more immersive experiences. On that kind of enterprise front, I mentioned telecommunication, 5G rollouts. With 2G, 3G, 4G networks, LTE networks, the need for these really high resolution 3D models wasn't there as much. The way a signal propagates, if it's a 3G or a 4G network, is very different than the way this next generation 5G network propagates. 5G is a much higher frequency bandwidth that even things like your hand or a tree or a building would certainly interfere with. So using high resolution 3D models that are not only high resolution, but that are current and that represent the state of the earth today, enable telco operators to plan antenna rollouts and plan their network development much more efficiently. On the automotive front or on the navigation front, vehicles being able to triangulate where they are. So using those onboard sensors, whether it's LiDAR or radar or visual cameras, and triangulate against a 3D map so that that vehicle knows where it is in the physical environment at any time, is a huge enabling capability for autonomy. We have drone partners that we work with that do similar things where they're able to plan drone routes more efficiently. And even in some aeronautical examples where we've worked with the Griffin fighter jets, where they can leverage a 3D map in the use of what's called virtual positioning systems, which is something that's used in a GPS-denied environment. So if a fighter jet does not have access to a GPS signal for whatever reason, it can actually geolocate itself by looking at the ground in front of it and localizing that to a 3D map on board. It's a really exciting technology that we've been able to prove out that is enabled by geospatial digital twins that have the resolution and the currency and the global coverage to enable this type of thing to happen anywhere in the world.
For our industry, I do see in the immediate future, real virtual reality and augmented reality use cases. In the case of augmented reality, that accuracy and geospecificity is necessary, and that can be, in terms of like 5G or next gen telco rollouts. On the government contracting side, that could be, kind of planning missions, and you need to know where things are at, and it needs to be correct. On the virtual reality side, we're looking at, you want to have that 3D representation of the world, both sides of the house. But I think that on the VR side, we have the ability to be more creative with it and to play with it. Functionally speaking, on the commercial side, I'm actually really looking forward to the educational opportunities, because one of the things that the internet brought to the world was access to more information. And I think that having that 3D immersive, virtual and/or augmented reality and beyond, will open up doors even more. And we learn our best when we're immersed in something. So that's the aspect of this that I'm really fascinated by.
From a government perspective, there are a lot of use cases for interacting with 3D data in a digital twin or metaverse scenario. Today, Maxar contributes to the One World to Raid program by providing an immersive training environment with our precision 3D data. Of course, it's the government. They have an acronym for this. They call it GEMS, which means gaming, exercising, modeling, and simulation. And so as with a lot of technologies, the government actually can be a very leading indicator of where things are going. The same way the government enabled GPS technology, and now we all carry multiple GPS devices on us every day, whether on our wrist or in our pocket. We're seeing the same thing with 3D. So our government partners that we work with are some of our biggest innovators in leveraging 3D data in their decision making, whether it's mission planning, whether it's simulating different environments or experiences. And they're using a lot of those same gaming engines that I mentioned previously.
So we've worked to define what the metaverse is. We've worked to understand what it means to the geospatial industry. But what does Maxar have in terms of products and services connected to the metaverse?
Yeah, so I mentioned that Maxar has a suite of 3D products, starting with these stereo pair created digital elevation models, and then our partnership to create this precision 3D product that Maxar now brings to market. Our most recent 3D product is called Synth3D, and this is a product that is built in partnership with Blackshark.ai, a Graz, Austria company. And we entered into a partnership with Blackshark last year in 2022. And in that time since then, we have launched this Synth3D product. Now, Synth3D is unique in that it creates a geotypical representation of the world. And so what does geotypical mean? It's kind of a new term in our industry. Geotypical means that what you're looking at is representative of what the world actually looks like in that area. So it is leveraging actual building footprints or building roof prints, and then extracting those buildings in 3D based on typical building heights in that area. And so what that means is you won't see a 50-story bungalow in a rural area. You won't see, 100-story skyscrapers in suburban America. And you won't see, the opposite. In these central business districts in downtown San Francisco, you're not going to see these, residential type single-family homes. And so the technology that Blackshark has developed is taking our Maxar's Vivid base map, which is a high-resolution global scale base map, and the ability to extract that in 3D globally, really targeting simulation, media, entertainment, and gaming type applications, where you may not need the exact building height, and you may not need the exact building facade as it appears when you're walking through the streets, but you need something that is very performant, that has that global scalability, and that is really optimized for gaming engines.
So, Synth3D is a visually pleasing, highly performant, geotypical 3D replica of the world. By geotypical, I mean that the building features and heights are representative for a given area, with the end result being that, for that environment, it should look and feel real enough. So I want to draw that distinction between geospecific and geotypical. When we talk about geospecific, I'm talking about like the heights are accurate, the building facades are representative of like what the real world is. For Synth3D, geotypical heights and geotypical facades based on regional archetypes. How users can experience Synth3D is in multiple ways. So from a, kind of streaming and software side, we offer a software development kit and an Unreal plugin. Other plugins and other ways to interact with other environments are in the works. And if someone doesn't have means to, use like the SDK or Unreal plugin, we do offer export file formats in USD, OBJ, FBX, and GLTF formats today with 3D tiles on the roadmap. So outputs that, our customers are seeing. So for example, we're working with a couple of energy companies on their permitting process right now. And they're actually using the Unreal plugin, so kind of that immersive environment to visualize like where like power stations and transmissions, towers, and other kind of equipment would reside, so that they can provide that feel of like, where is this in kind of the world, so to speak. How does that relate to your neighborhood? And so that when they're presenting to, these committees, that they can not only speak to it and show images, right? They can actually fly through this environment so that people can see that would mean in eventually the real world.
So far in our exploration of the metaverse, we've seen how this exciting new technology has the potential to revolutionize the way we do business. We've seen how companies are leveraging the power of the metaverse to improve collaboration, enhance our daily workflows, and unlock new opportunities for growth. But despite this focus on the business applications of the metaverse, it's important to remember that this technology has the power to help people directly.
We were fortunate enough to have Jane Goodall of the Jane Goodall Institute visit us at our headquarters here in Colorado, and she gave an incredibly inspiring presentation, as she always does. And one of her stories that she gave was of a village that she worked with, and the example that she gave was a village leader who had to make a really difficult decision of, should we commence in deforestation for short-term economic gain because it's an opportunity and of course we have to feed our villagers, or should we take the conservation route and try to pursue more of a long-term economic and social and environmental, of course, gain by conserving this forest and by not pursuing deforestation. And it's a tough decision for someone in that scenario to make when you have that short-term economic gain on the one hand and really an unknown future on the other hand. And what the Institute was able to do was to, leveraging Maxar's 3D data, create a virtual environment where this village leader who had to make this decision could go in and could actually see what their village would look like if they took that shorter-term deforestation route. And when you can actually see the impacts in 3D, in an immersive experience, whether it's an augmented reality or a virtual reality, or even something, on a flat screen, but in 3D, it provides a really immersive experience and much better information in helping you make that decision.
As we near the end of our journey into the metaverse, we should reflect on the theme of inspiration. To create, to innovate, and to push the boundaries of what's possible.
Maxar is constantly innovating, constantly building new products, constantly building and launching new satellites. A key cornerstone of that innovation is building out the world in 3D. The new use cases and opportunities that a global scale, high resolution, current 3D digital twin bring are huge. And really, we don't even have a perspective of all the different use cases that are enabled by it today. And we're excited. We're really excited about the path ahead and seeing how our partners, whether it's gaming partners or enterprise, government, NGOs, how they will enable and how they will interact with our 3D models in these digital twins that are coming to market. The future is bright for 3D, without a doubt. It's the world that we live in the world that we interact with, and we're excited to build these immersive experiences in the virtual world as well.
I think the most fun thing about building 3D worlds, both when I was on the Precision 3D team and now that I've worked on Sim3D, is an appreciation for just how complex global terrain and our building features are. And so getting to explore that every day in one form or fashion has been such an adventure. I'm very passionate because I feel like we are in the beginning phases. Not everyone's using 3D yet. We see that as the next field, and there's so much unknown and so much to learn. So I'm so happy I'm right here in this place at this moment.
As we've seen from our discussions, the concept of the metaverse has expanded far beyond the stereotype of VR headsets and gaming. It has tremendous applications to enhance and create positive change in the world around us. I would like to thank Maxar's Josh Weiner and Sydney Cortez for joining us in uncovering the metaverse and helping us learn how Maxar is playing a big role in making geospatial technology an immersive experience. I'm Adam Simmons with Project Geospatial. Talk to you next time. Hi, welcome to Project Geospatial. I'm Adam Simmons, back for another year with the Geoint pregame show with Kevin Corbley. Kevin, I am so glad to have you back once again. It's amazing always talking about not just Geoint, but all things geospatial with you.
That's right. There's so much going on. Thanks for having me back again, Adam. And for those of you who don't know me, I own Corbley Communications, and I've been, it seems like forever, been providing marketing and communication services to the geospatial industry worldwide. Now at Geoint, I have a contract to manage the press room, and I always start off by saying that I am not here today as an official spokesperson for Geoint. I'm just talking as Kevin Corbley, Corbley Communications.
Fair enough. Well, let's get right into it. The Geoint Symposium has been going on for quite a few years now. Actually, we're about to hit, are we about to hit 20 years or a little more than that?
I think so. I think it's 20, yeah.
Yeah, incredible. So with that said, it's still going alive and strong. And this year, it's happening in Orlando, Florida, May 5th through the 8th. It's been a few years since it's been to Orlando. I think, I think I've been to Orlando 2 or 3 times for Geoint. But I don't think it's been in Orlando since, am I correct if I'm wrong, 2018?
I think it was more like 2016, 2017, around there. I wasn't at that when the last time I was in Geoint at the Gaylord in Orlando was, I think, about one of the early ones, maybe 17 years ago, 18 years ago, for me anyway. So, but anyway, yeah, but beautiful property, and it's a very, very nice venue for a conference.
Absolutely. It's a good spot. Glad to be back. It's one of my favorite spots for Geoint anyway. With that said, let's get right into it. This year's theme is a little bit interesting. What is this year's theme for the year, Kevin?
It is...
I'll throw you off there. It's all good.
Yeah, it's all dimensions, all domains. And maybe you've got the full thing. I don't have it in front of me.
It looks like essential in all dimensions and domains. So you're pretty close, essential. Right?
Sorry, essential.
Yeah. What do we think that means this year? I mean, there's a lot of teasers, but based off of potential talks and schedule, what do we think we can expect from something like that?
I think in terms of dimensions, obviously, we're talking 3D. That's been around a long time. 4D is a big thing now with time. But the domains, it's just everywhere. And if you look at the agenda, you see there's a lot of content on space. So what's happening in space, what's being done in space, and there are a lot of sessions on that. And in a few minutes, I think you and I are going to talk a little bit about how many satellites there are. So that's really what they're getting at. Geoint applies everywhere now, on the seas, on the lands, in the air, in orbit, everywhere.
So not just domains in terms of multiple enclaves virtually or clouds, but like you just said, everywhere, maritime, air, disconnected environments even. So they have a blanket statement this year just to cover how it is everywhere. And of course, you added that notion of digital twins and the 3D virtual space as we're trying to dive deeper into the not just augmented reality, but dive deeper into the virtual space too.
Exactly. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of discussion of digital twins and other term that we probably didn't hear of, 3 years ago before that, and now it's everywhere. So that's a really big deal. By the way, one of the speakers on one of the panels is going to be from Disney, and Disney has a digital twin of its property, maybe all of the properties, I don't know, but he's going to be talking about what they do with their digital twin of the property there at Disney World in Orlando.
I am actually really excited to see what kind of presentation that looks like. I know Disney, more than a lot of companies, do definitely collect on a lot of their customers and people walking through the park. And that's for security reasons. It's also to help with the park experience out, and it'd be really fascinating from a positive use of that technology, how they do it, map where everybody is, map how the flow is, map how to keep track of everything. And then what do they do to visualize it and manage it? I think that would be a really excellent session to go to. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the many. There are so many good sessions. I mean, there always are good sessions. In terms of keynotes, the ones that I know people are going to be focused in on, we've got Vice Admiral Whitworth from NGA speaking on Monday morning, and as well as Lieutenant General Miller from Space Force. So those are going to be extremely well attended. Those are both on Monday morning, the first official day of Geoint. Of course, Geoint Forward is on Sunday, the day before. And another speaker that I always look forward to is Dr. Dixon from DNI. She always has some insights, and everybody will be paying attention to her as well. So there are a lot of other keynotes this year, just very interesting panels. So a lot of things going on in the main stage and then at other venues throughout the facility.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I know Dr. Stacy Dixon has got an extensive career, so she'd be really, really good to hear from this year as well. Previous years, we've had a number of prominent figures take the stage, but we're definitely looking forward to this one too. Now let's kind of get into a little bit deep down in the weeds. You know, being that the Geoint industry has changed so much in the last 10 years, Kevin, how do you feel about the current state of things? You know, what does the state of the industry look like from your perspective?
I think the geospatial industry looks great in general. And I think you and I talked offline about GeoWeek, which was here in Colorado about 2 months ago. And that's always a great kickoff to the kind of the trade show year, especially since it's local for me. I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. And it was a great show, just a lot of buzz, and more than one attendee said to me, there's really good energy here. Everybody's upbeat. And we can kind of touch on this topic of this issue that you know, for the first time ever, I guess, the geospatial industry, and then of course by association, geointelligence, there's almost a glut of data out there, if we could say that. And we have so many new satellite constellations up there. And on the commercial side is what I'm talking about. And what's so fascinating is you don't just have high res now, but we've got several hyperspectral constellations up there, several radar constellations, and it's there's a lot of data. It's a lot of people were wondering what's going to happen with all that data. Is it possible to have too much data? What are your thoughts on that, Adam?
I actually do think it's possible to have too much data, but only in that how do you manage the supply chain and the flow of the data to the users, right? Mm-hmm. And I think having tremendous or an infinite amount of data is useful just to be able to access it. But if the users are stovepiped through the supply chain, I think that's where the biggest issues are, right? So no longer is the issue the supply itself. How do we fix different areas of the chain, right? You know, it used to be the biggest question to providers is how fast can you downlink the imagery to the ground station, and how fast can you get it down into your platform itself? You know, actually, I'm not going to say that all those problems are solved, but for the most part, the providers do a really decent job, especially with these multi-day revisits to get the imagery down into their own systems extremely fast within, if not minutes, then a few hours of taking the image. I think the next big hurdle is actually how does either the resellers or how does the clients of these providers get access to it? Because I think the actual selling process or the actual purchase process, access to the APIs or having middlemen in between the end customers, such as the resellers, are the biggest problem within the supply chain right now. And that's not automated in helping, because those people in the middle have to understand the user's use cases before you can even order the data. They have to understand the sensor parameters, what imagery to order for those use cases. And that, quite frankly, isn't mapped to machine learning just yet, though there are companies that are starting to make waves in that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was talking with, again, GeoWeek attendees, is that if there is an area that the satellite operators could do better in, it's education. I mean, there's still a lot of folks out there, and I'm talking within the government and then within the commercial sector who, radar, they still need to understand there's a lot that can be done with radar that I think people are not taking full advantage yet. And then
where do you see the problem there, right? I mean, I don't disagree there is an educational problem, but why do you think this educational problem exists?
That's a good question. I can tell you from conversations I've had, one of the issues that the satellite operators, the startups, have, at least from what I'm hearing, they're having to spend quite a bit of money. They're always looking for new funding, so that's one of their issues, and that's that can cause you to lose your focus or divert your focus a little bit. And I think there's too much of an assumption out there that all the users, especially within the government, and let's face it, people at Geoint or at USG or at NGA, they're savvy users of data, but they need training at some point. A lot of this is new data, new capabilities, and I think more so on the hyperspectral side. I mean, there's just
absolutely on the hyperspectral side, right? So if we go back to the three, we'll call it the three arms of imagery that when I was trained on the Air Force, you have electro-optical, infrared, and SAR. Now we are trained in those use cases, but the diversity of the available options with each becomes a challenge because we're basically given very basic products versions of those spectrums, and we're not used to the swath of options that are given commercially. So there is a training mode. But I actually would argue that is it responsible to expect the training and use cases and education to come from the providers? Or why aren't we seeing more educational endeavors done by the analysis companies? Because I think that's where the providers expect a lot of their clients to come from, knowledgeable customers, which is part of the problem, is that they expect knowledgeable users to purchase their imagery already so they don't have to train it. And of course, that restricts them from a wider supply chain. But why aren't we seeing more analysis companies doing the training?
That's a good point. Maybe they feel like they don't need to because if they're providing answers, I don't know. That's a great point. Of course, from your perspective with your background, more about the analysis and so forth.
No, I'm not trying to pass the buck to the analysis companies. But I think there's a balance because you don't expect. You don't expect the mining companies to teach you about silver. You have further down the supply chain, the actual financial markets that help you understand the value of it, why it's important. The product side of things teaches you what the importance of silver is, right? Putting it in electronics. It's making coins out of it, things like that. But you don't expect the mining companies to do that. So I think it's a real flip-flop in our industry on how we expect the supply chain to fill some of these, we'll call it marketing narratives, as opposed to other industries out there.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And one of the questions I get asked, and please, again, from your background, formerly in the Army, I get asked,
definitely not Army.
I'm so sorry.
All good.
We'll have to edit that out, won't we?
Oh, I'll keep it in for bloopers just to give you a hard time.
Right. No, but the point I was going to make, I've completely lost track of what I was going to say. No, the question I get all the time is, in terms of marketing, how do we market to the government versus the commercial sector? And what I always say is, for the most part, and there are exceptions, but the people in the government, they're reading a lot of the same publications, they're attending the webinars from companies like yours and so forth. So I don't think there's a lot different needs to be done in order to market and educate the Geoint community. But please, if you know different, I think that would be really interesting to hear about.
That's a loaded topic, and I got definitely a lot of opinions on that, right? So,
Okay.
Do I think that more education and training need to be done? Yes, but I think it comes down to what sector of the geospatial community that we're talking about. Where I've seen, and I've actually tried to focus a lot of on colleges and universities and see how they're training new and upcoming professionals. And for the most part, I think their biggest weakness is they have a lack of understanding behind the use cases of the technology, and they train more on the applications themselves. And this is where I go into like, hey, I like Esri just as much as the next person, but they heavily train on one specific tools, perhaps ArcGIS Pro. They don't teach you on the open source technologies as much, or but they're so tool heavy in the education. When these folks get out the door, they don't understand how to use these tools. And I would argue I'd rather train a little bit backwards. Train on use cases first, train on the optional tools available, and just say, look, what tool would fit the use case that you need to get accomplished? And unfortunately, that training isn't quite there to understand where the education goes. Now, from the other side of the markets, between government and industry is always looking for how to understand government requirements. How do you translate acquisitional requirements back to the mission? And that's really key there. What do you plan to use these sensors for? And so there's always this kind of back and forth double-edged sword between that battle to understand use cases, where the government wants to understand, hey, what technologies do you have to fix our mission use cases? And so there's this kind of black hole in the middle, or this kind of black box in the middle, where something never gets translated between one another very effectively. So I don't have a good solution for that. But I would argue that we need to train people to be better critical thinkers, to point to the tools that are available based off of their problem, and not just focused on the tools themselves. And I think that's a big risk that the community has, especially as all these machine learning tools come up on board. We're trying to say that analysts aren't going to be replaced. They're just going to continue to work on the context of the analysis going forward. Well, if that's the case, they absolutely need to be better critical thinkers. So how do you change that mentality? And because it's not all about counting aircraft and cars anymore. Where an imagery analyst, that's what we truly did. We didn't provide context. That was the all-source analysts that provide the context to some degree. So we have to change not just the tradecraft, we have to change the process.
Right. And the question then becomes, and we could go off a long way on this, but when and where do we teach critical thinking? Because I recently had a discussion with somebody who talked about how the young people are not learning critical thinking schools. So where should they be learning it? Is it elementary school, high school, college? Is it?
I truly think it should be as young as possible, in parallel to learning why these things are important. I mean, but I will admit, this is where I don't truly have a good answer for you, Kevin. I think it definitely needs to be in the K through 12 level.
Yeah.
I think when you hit college and you try to teach critical thinking, it's not that you shouldn't, but I think we're at a point where we're a little too late to become as effective as I think they should be.
Yeah, that's totally agree. And yeah, I mean, we can keep talking about that. That's
and like you said, that's where I go into the education topic is a really open-ended topic. I think the other thing that we need to do well, if we're going to connect, because we obviously need a massive demand in the workforce right now, despite the economy. There's still plenty of geospatial jobs out there. It's ups and downs. There's a huge demand for certain types of skill sets. But we need to somehow do a better job of connecting academia with understanding industry needs, and that's difficult. Help showcase what these jobs are, what they actually involve, day in the life of not just an analyst, but day in the life of a data scientist, day in the life of why I don't just use this tool, but I have 4 or 5 other tools that are similar to it that I might use because this one's going to work better for slightly answering this question better,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And all of these jobs that we're talking about that have names, photogrammetrist, geospatial analyst, and all that, I would dare say, unfortunately, teachers in the middle school level, they don't know about them. They just have not been educated, and that's again, and I blame our industry.
I don't know if it's when I say to no fault of their own, but I would say maybe it is, right? Like I would like to see. I mean, look, it's hard to say to push somebody who's already in a geospatial professional job who's getting good money to all of a sudden take a year off and do teaching. But how do you fix that? Well, I would actually argue like instead of an internship, and this is where I go back to Geoint, we need to enhance how we get students involved in trade shows. And this is not a criticism on like the golden ticket program, but I would argue that it's more beneficial to have a set of students who are walking around getting introduced to different companies on the trade show floor than it is to provide them a more structured tour. I mean, I'm more for an unstructured format. We've managed a bunch of interns at past Geoints before, and getting them introduced to the art of fossil, because a lot of these students walk out with maybe a handful of possibilities that they of college, thinking that that's all they can do. Then they introduce to an expo floor, and they're like, "Oh my God, I had no idea this whole world existed," and their whole world opens up into the possibilities. And a lot of those people get resumes requests like none other, right? So, and that says something. It says something about that disconnect, but it wouldn't take much. We don't need to put them all through the necessary training classes. Sometimes we just need to put them in an environment where they get more exposed.
Yeah, and that I don't have a lot of details on the program, but at this year's Geoint, expect to see more students in the expo hall.
Which that's great. I love seeing that. I want to see, but not just students. I think there's always been, and this is why we started Project Geospatial. I would love to someday see more transitioning military into this environment too. Because I don't see enough, and that's one of the biggest struggling areas as a career professional coming out of the military is you're in just as much trouble as the individual in college because you don't know what your options are.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. So, that another good point. There's so many things.
You want to get me on education? We can definitely talk about that.
Me too. Same here. And if anybody wants to give me a call, I've got some very, very structured ideas on programs that could be started to get.
We'll be flashing your number on the screen. Let's telemarketing call.
I'm easy to find. That's the thing.
555.
But other topics. Just I'm looking. Sorry, I keep looking down, looking at my notes. Just a couple things that going to be really interesting. The lightning talks at Geoint have been really popular, and so I think last year maybe it was 5 minutes or was it 10? They were really short. There's a new thing this year in the Vista Hub, and these are going to be more techie talks, but a little bit longer than the lightning talks. And so there's really going to be some cutting edge things discussed there.
So I like the lightning talks. Look, I mean, you have different flavors of formats for media for all people, right? People have different preferences. And I record them all for the sake of our audience for what we can grab. But I tell you what, I love the format of lightning talks because they're quick. Sometimes they're anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes, maybe sometimes a little longer depending on your format, but usually no more than that. It's great to just, it's like a walk-in, walk-out session type of thing. You're not committed for another full hour or two, which sometimes takes away for how big the conference is. You don't want to commit that much time to something. And I think the worst part is about panels or big VIP sessions is, although they're good to see, is those sessions are normally so scripted and approved by public affairs that you can almost just get the read ahead and just be done with it, right? So, but I do love the lightning talks personally because they make you think and they're quick enough that you can digest and remember, and it doesn't take away from the rest of the conference experience.
Yeah. Well, these in the Vista Hub are going to be a little more techy, a little longer than last year's. Although the lightning talks still exist, I want to, don't want to say that they've replaced them. So a couple of other things. Just Geoint Forward the day before, that's on Sunday. Some interesting things. One thing that caught my attention, there's going to be a talk on, we've all heard of ChatGPT. There's going to be something called GeoGPT, and this is more of a location-based AI that will help you find things. I guess I'm just looking at the title anyway. That should be really interesting. That's at 1:15 on Sunday.
Yeah, that should be a really, really interesting one. I'm not a fan of their marketing per se, but I understand what they're trying to achieve, and that'll be a game changer for us. When I say their marketing, they're like, "Hey, ChatGPT doesn't do this that we do," but I was like, "Okay, let's." I think some of the current AIs out there are pretty incredible if you actually hyper focus them, but it's not fair to criticize one of the big boys out there when they're focused on everything and not hyper focus on their own industry, because I think I've been able to do some amazing things with Gemini, ChatGPT, and a few others. And I can't deny that I think some of the newer up and coming ones that are hyper focused actually have more to prove than the big boys do right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and so I'll tell you another question that I get asked a lot as a PR marketing guy. when there's going to be a big announcement, if your company is making a big announcement about, let's just say, rolling out a new product, and you're going to do it at Geoint or some trade show, the question is, when should we send the press release out? Should we send the press release out on the morning of the day that we're introducing the product at the show, or do we do it ahead of time? And I have studied this. I've done both. Absolutely ahead of time. Get it out a week, 10 days, just ahead of time.
Worst case, you can embargo the actual public release, but it helps to get it out there.
Get it out there, and then you do social media around it leading up to the show. Yeah. And that way people have heard about it. When they walk in the door, they already know, I want to go to your booth to see this cool new product that I heard about and I read about in one of the trade pubs. So that's the answer. I get asked that all the time. Get your press release out in advance.
Well, have you ever seen people just do the equivalent of we'll call it a press release teaser as opposed to a full press release?
Yeah, media advisory, usually you call that. Yeah. And that's, if you've really got just some earth-shattering thing and maybe going to do a press conference at a show, then yeah, you just kind of tease it in advance. And that way people need to come to your press conference or your booth at noon or whenever it's going to be. But yeah.
So what's early for you? What's early for what do you tell your clients that have this in the door by this date?
Yeah, I like 1 week to 10 days in advance. And the reason I like that is because that gives us 1 week to 10 days to put it out on social media. So you get the initial pickup of the press release in the trade press, and then you start posting LinkedIn and Twitter.
And for us, we occasionally, I'll admit we haven't done it a lot this last year, but when we take press releases and convert them into some of the video news files, I actually prefer to get them 3 to 4 weeks ahead of time, because I need about a week lead time for the production phase and planning some of the marketing out. And sometimes we need about a good 2 weeks between the actual production release and when the event starts to actually create traction and buzz with multiple posts along the way.
Right.
So, a little bit of a different scale for a video audio medium, but it's all subsequent based off of, when we get the initial release.
Oh yeah. So, my clients, they'll get me that information, especially if I'm writing the press release. We'll start working on that a month in advance of the event. So yeah, but I meant the actual release when we blast it out, the press release, usually about a week to 10 days.
Yeah, I think that'd be good for us as well. 10 days to, I'd say no later than 10 days personally. But yeah.
Yeah. And just a reminder for exhibitors out there, public affairs officers who have some kind of an announcement, a press kit, press release, bring a hard copy, put it in the press room, which will be Osceola Ballroom 3 in the Gaylord Palms.
Well, Kevin, I want to ask you, what's your opinion on Eddie? What type of
press releases are good? You've seen your good, which ones are qualitative? You've seen your good version of good press releases and bad press releases. I have my own opinion of ones I just kind of toss to the side. I don't really pay attention to. But which one, what kind of press releases do you think companies should put out there to be the most effective?
This is a great question. And this is something I have talked with the journalists, the reporters in the press room about. So an event like Geoint, the topic is geointelligence. Most of the reporters there are covering the defense and intelligence community. So announcements related to products, services designed for the defense and intelligence community. It's that simple. If you have other kinds of more generic geospatial products, services to announce, that's great, but that might be better suited for a different show. So try to keep it relevant to the show itself.
No, that's really good advice. My take is it drives me crazy when we're going to an expo and all they've announced is, oh, we've just, in the press release is only about, we have some new VP of sales or VP of, positional press releases don't do a lot for me from a news standpoint.
Sure.
And I think sometimes companies, and that's just one tiny example, but I think some companies need to know what's relevant to their audience too.
Right, and their audience and that particular event, if it's going to be shaped, or if the press release is going to be released around an event like we're seeing this week.
Yeah, and I'd even argue that if you're a really, really big company or even a medium-sized company, and you touch multiple industries, clean up some of your boiler statements, right? Some of them are too generic, and if you're going into an industry that is specific, like geospatial, the Geoint, it'd be helpful to understand, what does your company do relative to this industry you're a part of? Otherwise, I don't know why I'm going to go to you.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And I hope all companies do this, but for a show that's as niche as Geoint, everything in the booth, not everything, but most of the text and the verbiage in the booth needs to be specific related to Geoint. And the way booths are designed these days, I mean, you can pull off panels and put new panels up. You can have the same booth structure with different panels for the Esri show in a couple months. So yeah, it's you're right. It needs to the messaging needs to be very focused.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, any other marketing tricks of the trade you'd like to put out to the audience ahead of Geoint this year, or anything specific to Geoint that we wanted to talk about as we start to wrap up?
Just, it is possible there will be a launch from, do they call it Cape Kennedy? No, Cape Canaveral.
Cape Canaveral, I believe. It's not.
Yeah,
I don't think
Kennedy Space Center, I think, at Cape Canaveral. Anyway, could be a launch. So we got our fingers crossed. So we might be able to see that.
So they clarified there could be an actual space launch during the period we're at Geoint. We're not sure. Right. Maybe it's Sunday or Monday. But obviously Cape Canaveral is several hours away from Orlando. But that doesn't mean that still means that if you are able to run outside, we understand what the launch period is, you might be able to see this launch right from Geoint itself.
Correct. Yeah. So fingers crossed for that. But we all know how launches, can get scrubbed up to the last second. So
hey, still really exciting. Even if they pushed that back by a couple of days, it might be worth staying an extra day so you can go up to Cape Canaveral and watch the launch, right?
Not bad. Not a bad idea. Yeah. And the only other thing I want to mention before we sign off is that there's another conference called IGARS. It is an IEEE conference. It's very academic. A lot of students go to it to present their PhD theses. And I will be there. I've got a panel I'm doing on entrepreneurship. It is just a dynamite lineup of panelists I've got talking about startups, how to get funding, business accelerators, how to go to market. It's going to be a great session. That's in July, IGARS 2024 in Athens, Greece.
Athens, Greece, absolutely. And for those of you who don't know, IEEE is a massive international organization that stands for the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. And the IGARS specifically
has to do with the remote sensing technology aspect of the community. So it's very scientific, as Kevin noted. I went to it the first time last year in Pasadena, California. It was really, really interesting. We had a lot of folks from NOAA, JPL, European Space Agency, and industry was not as diverse as I would have expected at something like this. It was very, very academic and scientific, but really fascinating to learn about the cutting edge science of remote sensing itself. So highly recommend going out there and checking that conference out if you've never been before. And awesome, you get to see Kevin out there too and say hi.
Yeah, and one thing about IGARS, you're right. There's not as big an industry presence, I think, as there should be. This show is a great place. I'm talking about IGARS to poach the latest talent, because you're going to have students present, like I said, master's, PhD level, presenting their papers. These are smart young people. And, if I were running a remote sensing or analytics business, I'd be there trying to hire away the best talent.
This is one of those conferences where you actually want to pay a lot more attention. I say not more, but you should always pay attention to the poster boards by the students in every conference. It's worth it. But this one in particular, there's literally hundreds of posters. The poster sessions are a massive focus point, and these projects are incredible.
Yep. Yeah. It's great. So that's in, again, IGARS in July. It's July. I'm going to look at my calendar. Sorry about this. It goes July 8th through 12th or 13th. So that whole week pretty much in Athens, Greece.
Awesome. Well, good luck for anybody who can make it out there, and I encourage you to do so. Kevin, I want to thank you for joining us for another year of the Geoint pregame show. We will definitely see you on site. Just as a reminder, Geoint Symposium is taking place in Orlando, Florida this year, May 5th through the 8th. And we will see everybody there by Project Geospatial. And by the way, we are doing interviews this year, partnered with Greater St. Louis Inc. on the exhibit floor this year. So look for us on the floor. And we're excited to see everybody again and see what the geospatial industry has to offer.
Great. And thanks again for having me, Adam.
All right. Adam Simmons, Project Geospatial, signing off. Thank you, everybody.